Hello and welcome to the Snoozy Scientist, where we explore life's deepest secrets one sleepy yawn at a time. Tonight we're drifting together into the strangest corners of our world, places that seem to bend reality itself, spots where gravity appears to run backward, magnetic fields act up, and mysterious forces play tricks on our senses. Some of these strange places have baffled explorers for centuries. Roads that make cars roll uphill all by themselves, rocks that balance so impossibly they look like nature's magic tricks, and fields where your compass spins like it's lost its mind. Are they illusions, cracks in the universe, or tiny windows into the limits of the laws we think we know? Even today, scientists keep trying to explain how some of these odd places work, but sometimes the answers just lead to more questions. But tonight, we won't just wander through these places, we'll share the most plausible explanations for why they appear to break physics, and let you decide whether the mystery feels solved or if it drifts on just a little longer. Before we wander too far, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment and tell me what time it is wherever you're winding down. And if these gentle rambles help you drift off, please tap like and consider subscribing. It keeps this little snoozy corner of the internet alive, and it means the world to have you here. Now settle in, take a deep breath, and let's begin our journey to places that seem to defy the laws of physics. Spook Hill, Florida. In a quiet town called Lake Wales, tucked away in the middle of Florida, there is a small stretch of road that has been puzzling drivers for almost a century. It is called Spook Hill. The name alone sounds like something from a ghost story, and in many ways it is. People come here from all over to see a simple but strange thing happen. Their car rolls uphill all by itself. Imagine pulling your car up to the white line painted on the cracked asphalt. You follow the old sign's instructions. You put the car in neutral. You lift your foot from the brake, and then, slowly but surely, your car begins to drift backward, except the road looks like it slopes uphill. Instead of rolling down as you would expect, your car appears to climb against gravity, creeping up the rise with no engine to push it along. It is the kind of thing that makes you lean forward, squint at the road, and wonder if the laws of physics have just stepped aside for a moment to play a trick. People have been telling tales about Spook Hill for generations. Some say it all started with the legend of a great battle between a Native American chief and a huge alligator that terrorized the village. The story goes that the spirits of the chief and the giant beast still haunt this slope. Others claim the ghosts of pioneers or long-forgotten soldiers push the cars uphill to remind visitors that some secrets belong to the past. There are those who whisper about magnetic fields under the earth, or strange energies that swirl beneath the road, tugging cars in directions they should not go. It is the kind of local folklore that children repeat on sleepovers, and visitors love to imagine when they park their cars at dusk. The streetlights flicker on, the trees cast long shadows across the pavement, the air hangs heavy with Florida humidity. You sit there in your car, the tires gently rolling, and for a moment you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the ghost stories are true. But what really happens at Spook Hill? Why does this simple stretch of road feel like it is playing with gravity? The answer, though far from spooky, is just as fascinating when you think about how easily our minds can be fooled. Spook Hill is what scientists and geologists call a gravity hill. Gravity hills exist all around the world, from electric Bray in Scotland to Magnetic Hill in India. They all share one thing in common: they make your eyes lie to you. The road, the trees, the slopes, all combine to create an optical illusion that confuses your sense of what is up and what is down. At Spook Hill, the surrounding landscape tricks your brain. There are no clear visual markers to ground your sense of level. The trees lean ever so slightly. The horizon line is hidden by the rise and fall of nearby hills. Fences, telephone poles, and the distant edge of the road do not run in perfectly straight lines. Because of this, when you see the slope, your brain misjudges its angle. The slight downhill incline looks like an uphill climb, so when your car rolls in neutral, it is actually drifting gently downhill, pulled by good old gravity, but your eyes and brain are convinced you are watching it defy nature instead. Scientists who study these spots often bring levels and measuring tools to test the slope. When they do, they find that the uphill roll is simply a mild downhill slope that looks entirely different to the naked eye. It is a reminder that our sense of balance and direction depends so much on what we see around us. Take away clear points of reference, a straight tree, a true horizon, and our brains fill in the blanks, sometimes in the strangest ways. But knowing the explanation does not take away the fun. If anything, it makes Spook Hill even more special. It is not just a place of ghost stories and legends. It is a gentle lesson in how much we rely on our eyes and how easily our senses can be tricked by the world around us. It makes you wonder how many other tiny illusions you pass by every day without noticing. A sidewalk that looks flat but is tilted just enough to make your step feel odd. A building that appears to lean when the clouds move just right. Shadows that change the shape of the ground at sunset. Spook Hill is not about monsters or spirits lurking in the night. It is about the magic that happens when nature, physics, and the human mind dance together. It is a reminder that the world does not always need to break its own rules to feel mysterious. Sometimes, the greatest puzzles are right there in front of us, hiding in plain sight, waiting for a curious eye and an open mind. So if you ever find yourself in Lake Wales, Florida, follow the sign to Spook Hill. Park your car on the faded white line. Put it in neutral. Feel that tiny shiver of excitement as you lift your foot off the brake. Watch the trees sway in the breeze as your car starts to roll. Let the road remind you that reality can tilt when you least expect it. And as you drift to sleep tonight, picture that little stretch of asphalt under the stars, cars creeping slowly against the pull of gravity, or so it seems. Somewhere in the distance an owl calls, the wind whispers through the trees, and the world with all its hidden illusions keeps spinning on, holding its secrets close for just a little while longer. Mystery Spot, Santa Cruz, California. Tucked into a quiet forest just outside the city of Santa Cruz, California, sits a place that has puzzled visitors, delighted skeptics, and tickled the imaginations of travelers for more than 80 years. It is called the Mystery Spot. The name alone is enough to spark curiosity. What could be so mysterious about a small patch of woodland on a hillside? But when you step inside its boundaries, you begin to feel like the world has tipped ever so slightly off its axis. Imagine standing with your feet planted firmly on the wooden floor of a cabin, yet you feel like you are leaning sideways even though your body is straight, or watching your friend walk toward you along a tilted wall. But instead of walking upright, they appear to defy gravity, hovering at an impossible angle like a human-sized magnet glued to the side of a slanted house. At the Mystery Spot, the usual rules that keep your sense of balance steady seem to slip away. People look shorter or taller depending on where they stand. A ball, when placed on a plank of wood, will roll uphill instead of down. Trees appear to grow out of the hillside at odd angles, twisting your sense of up and down until you are not quite sure which way gravity wants to pull you. The story of how the Mystery Spot was discovered adds another layer to its legend. In 1939, a man named George Prather bought a small piece of land in the redwood forest. He planned to build a summer cabin and campgrounds, but as his workers began surveying the land, they noticed something strange. Tools did not sit level. Surveying equipment gave readings that made no sense. When they tried to build a structure on the site, they found themselves fighting the slope at every turn. Doors would swing open on their own. People working inside the small cabin felt a strange sense of dizziness and imbalance. Soon, George realized he had something special on his hands, a place where nature seemed to bend the ordinary laws of physics just enough to make you question what was real. He opened the mystery spot to the public in 1940, and visitors have been coming ever since. They line up to experience that dizzy feeling, to see their friends appear to shrink or grow by several inches in a matter of steps, and to walk up walls that would send them tumbling anywhere else in the world. Inside the tilted mystery spot cabin, everything feels off. Your eyes see one thing, while your inner ear feels another. You lean to stay upright, but the floor pulls you sideways. You laugh as you try to stand straight, but end up slanting like a tree caught in a strong wind. Tour guides show visitors simple demonstrations, like pouring water down what appears to be a tilted surface, only to watch the water flow in the opposite direction. They stand people of different heights on opposite ends of a plank, then switch their positions, and suddenly the shorter person looks taller, and the taller person looks small. It is no wonder that the mystery spot has inspired so many theories. Some say it is caused by a mysterious magnetic vortex buried deep beneath the hillside, a swirling pocket of energy that tugs at the pull of gravity. Others whisper about an alien spaceship buried underground, its strange energy field bending the laws of physics in its wake. And then there are those who just accept it as a quirk of the land, a curious place where the brain and the senses get tangled up like an old pair of shoestrings. But the truth, while less otherworldly, is just as fascinating when you see it in action. The mystery spot is really a clever illusion that tricks your mind into believing what your eyes tell you, even when your body knows something feels wrong. The cabin was built at an angle on a steep hillside. The floors, walls, and ceiling lean in different directions, creating conflicting signals for your brain to process. Without a true horizon to ground your sense of level, your inner ear and eyes start to disagree about which way is up. This tug of war between your senses is called a gravity hill illusion, like Spook Hill in Florida, but on a whole new level. Here, the tilted structure magnifies the effect. Inside the cabin, the sloping angles and odd perspectives twist what you see and feel until you start to lean just to stay balanced. Your brain tells your body to adjust, but the signals are scrambled. That is why you feel dizzy, off balance, and slightly giddy all at once. Even knowing the science behind it does not take away the joy of seeing your friend shrink or grow by simply stepping a few feet to the side. You cannot help but laugh when you watch a ball appear to roll uphill or water pour in the wrong direction. The mystery spot turns a simple patch of forest into a playful stage where nature and perception dance together. For many visitors, it is not just about the tilt and the tricks. It is about stepping into a place that reminds us how fragile and fascinating our senses can be. It is proof that what we think we know can be flipped upside down by something as simple as a slanted wall and a missing horizon. It is a gentle nudge to stay curious and open to wonder, even when the answers seem simple on paper. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, picture that little wooden cabin nestled among the towering redwoods of Santa Cruz. Imagine the soft sunlight filtering through the trees, casting shadows that stretch and bend, just like your sense of balance inside those crooked walls. Listen to the sound of laughter echoing as visitors lean, tilt, and giggle, caught for a moment in a world where up feels like down and nothing stays quite the way you expect. In the end, the mystery spot is not just a place on a map. It is a reminder that sometimes the strangest mysteries are the ones that live inside our own minds. And maybe just maybe, that is the best mystery of all. Magnetic Hill. High in the Himalayas, tucked into the stark, windswept landscape of Ladakh, there is a stretch of road that has become one of India's most beloved little mysteries. They call it Magnetic Hill. It is just a short stretch of tarmac winding through a vast and lonely valley. But here, in this rugged place where the mountains loom like ancient guardians, something curious happens. Cars appear to roll uphill all on their own. Picture yourself driving through Ladakh's high-altitude desert. The mountains are bare, carved by winds and centuries of silence. The sky stretches wide and clear, so blue it almost hurts your eyes. The road ahead cuts through the dusty earth like a thin black ribbon, and then, up ahead, a simple sign painted in bright letters says, "Magnetic Hill, the place where gravity defies." Curious? You follow the instructions. You pull your car to a marked spot on the road. You shift the gear into neutral. You lift your foot from the brake, and slowly, almost playfully, your car begins to drift. Instead of rolling down the gentle slope behind you, it appears to climb uphill, moving against the pull of gravity, as if some invisible force is giving it a friendly push. Local stories about this phenomenon go back generations. Villagers once spoke of strange magnetic powers deep in the hills that could pull heavy objects uphill. Truck drivers passing through would swear their big vehicles felt lighter on this stretch, as if the road was giving them a gentle hand. Some believed that aircraft flying overhead needed to adjust their instruments because the magnetic field beneath could affect their navigation. Tales like these turn a quiet piece of road into a place of legend, adding a touch of magic to a land already rich with myth and wonder. Every year, travelers and pilgrims make their way to Magnetic Hill. Some come for the thrill of seeing their car roll uphill. Others come just to stand there, arms folded, squinting at the mountains, trying to figure out if what they see could really be true. Tour buses stop, motorbikes gather in groups, and tourists line up to watch one vehicle after another roll uphill like a toy being pulled by a string. But what is really happening here? Does the earth hide some powerful magnet beneath this barren valley? Is there an ancient secret buried deep in the rocky hills that tugs at metal and bends the laws of physics? The truth, as with many strange places like this, is simpler but no less fascinating when you think about how easily our eyes and minds can be fooled. Like Spook Hill in Florida, Magnetic Hill in Ladakh is what geologists call a gravity hill. It is a naturally occurring optical illusion that makes a gentle downward slope look like it is slanting upward. When you see the road against the backdrop of the surrounding land, your brain gets tricked. The horizon is hidden by the way the mountains rise behind it. The valley floor tilts in a way that makes you lose your sense of what is truly level. Without clear reference points, your eyes send the wrong message to your brain. This car is rolling uphill, when in reality, gravity is still doing its work, pulling the car gently downhill along a slope that just looks like it should climb. Travelers have tested this illusion with spirit levels and other tools. When they measure the actual incline of the road, they find that the slope is slightly downhill, just enough to let a car roll in neutral. But the landscape around it tricks the senses into believing that what goes down must be going up. Some people say you can see the trick more clearly if you look away from the road and study the distant peaks and valley floor instead of the car itself. Yet, even when the explanation is simple, the feeling of watching it happen in such a vast, empty place makes it feel like the mountains themselves are sharing a secret. For centuries, the people of Ladakh have lived in harmony with this harsh land, where glaciers feed rivers that carve deep canyons, and where ancient monasteries perch on rocky cliffs like watchful birds. In this land of thin air and endless sky, a car rolling uphill feels like just one more little riddle in a place that already feels otherworldly. Standing there, you might feel the wind whip around you, carrying with it the dust of the high desert and the echoes of travelers who stood there before you, laughing in disbelief as their motorbike rolled uphill. You might take a photo to share with friends who will shake their heads and say, "How is that possible?" You might drive away, still scratching your head, your mind caught between what you know to be true and what your eyes insist they saw. And maybe that is what makes Magnetic Hill so special. It is a gentle reminder that our world loves to surprise us. It does not need magnets buried in the hills or secret engines hidden beneath the road. All it takes is the shape of the land, the tilt of a horizon, and the way our minds try to make sense of what they see. Sometimes a simple road can make us feel like children again, wide-eyed and full of questions. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture that lonely stretch of road high in the Himalayas. Picture a small car sitting still for a moment before it begins to roll, creeping up the road that is not really up at all. The mountains stand silent and ancient around it, the sky deep and endless overhead. And somewhere in that quiet place, the earth keeps its little illusion safe, reminding us that not every riddle needs to be solved to make us smile. Electric Bray. On the rugged west coast of Scotland, just south of the tiny village of Dunmore, lies a short stretch of road that has puzzled travelers for generations. It is called Electric Bray, a name that sounds like something pulled from a folk tale or a wizard's spellbook. In the old Scots language, Bray simply means a hill or slope. But what makes this slope so special is the electric part, a word that hints at the strange force people once believed was at work here. At first glance, Electric Bray looks like any other country road. It winds through green rolling hills, dotted with grazing sheep. Low stone walls line the edges, and the view stretches out toward the sea, where the waves of the Firth of Clyde wash the shores in an endless rhythm. But stop your car on the marked stretch, put it in neutral, and something odd happens. Your car begins to roll uphill, or at least it feels that way. Long before modern science gave us a clear answer, locals believed something mysterious was happening beneath their feet. They spoke of hidden magnetic fields running through the hills. Some thought the area was alive with an electric force that pulled vehicles and even water against the pull of gravity. A local legend even told of fairies and spirits guiding the wheels of travelers, nudging carts uphill to help weary horses on the climb. It is easy to see why these stories took hold. Scotland is a land rich in legends, where every loch and glen seems to hide a secret. When you stand at Electric Bray and watch a car drift up the road, your eyes struggle to believe what they see. The car creeps along at a steady pace, wheels turning slowly, moving in a direction that your mind tells you should be impossible without the engine's help. Children laugh as they toss a ball onto the road and watch it roll uphill. Cyclists stop and test it for themselves, feeling their bikes push back beneath them when they try to stand still. But as with many of the world's gravity hills, the truth behind Electric Bray is both simple and fascinating. It is not a magnetic field or an ancient spell that makes your car roll uphill. It is your mind and the land itself teaming up to fool you in the most delightful way. Electric Bray is a perfect example of an optical illusion known as a gravity hill. The gentle slope of the road combines with the surrounding landscape to trick your sense of balance and perspective. When you look around, the sloping fields and leaning fences create a horizon that is not level. The trees may tilt just slightly, or the rise and fall of the hills might hide the true shape of the ground beneath you. Without a clear horizon line to guide your eyes, your brain struggles to judge what is truly level and what is not. The result is a subtle but powerful illusion. The slope is actually downhill, but your brain reads it as an uphill climb. So when your car rolls in neutral, it is simply obeying gravity, but you see it as drifting uphill. It is the same trick at work in places like Spook Hill in Florida or Magnetic Hill in India, but here, with the rolling Scottish hills, it feels like stepping into a living fairy tale. Over the years, people have measured the slope of electric Bray using modern tools like spirit levels and GPS. Each test confirms the same thing. The road gently slopes downward, just enough to allow a car to roll under its own weight. There is no hidden magnet beneath the soil, no underground current of energy, just the patient pull of gravity, working alongside the magic of perspective to create a puzzle that has brought smiles to countless faces. But knowing the science does not spoil the fun. If anything, it makes the place feel even more special. Imagine the countless travelers who have stopped here over the centuries, from farmers driving horse-drawn carts to curious tourists in rented cars. Imagine the laughter of children tossing pebbles onto the road to watch them roll uphill. Picture the wide eyes of visitors seeing it for the first time, wondering if they have found a place where the earth quietly bends its own rules for a few precious moments. Standing at Electric Bray, the wind off the sea brushes your face, carrying the salty scent of distant waves. Sheep graze on the hillsides, their woolly shapes blending into the patchwork of green and stone. The road stretches out in front of you, plain and unassuming, but within its lines hides a lesson about how easily our minds can be led astray by what we see. It is a gentle reminder that the world is not always as it seems. Our eyes can trick us. Our brains can fill in gaps in ways that feel true, but are not. And sometimes, the ordinary, a simple road, a gentle slope, a missing horizon, can feel more magical than any hidden force or ancient legend. So if you ever find yourself driving along Scotland's west coast, take a moment to stop at Electric Bray. Shift your car into neutral. Let your hands rest on the wheel as your car begins its slow, steady drift. Watch the hedges and fields pass by as you roll uphill, feeling a tiny thrill that makes you smile long after you have driven away. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine that quiet road under a sky heavy with stars. Picture a car rolling gently against what your eyes believe is the pull of gravity. The hills stand watch, the sea whispers just beyond the fields, and the earth holds its small perfect illusion close, a reminder that there is always room for a little wonder in the way we see the world. Devil's Kettle. Deep in the north woods of Minnesota, hidden among the whispering pines and mossy cliffs, there is a waterfall that has puzzled hikers, scientists, and curious wanderers for generations. It is called the Devil's Kettle, a name that sounds like it belongs in an old folk tale, and in some ways it does. Here, a river splits in two, and one half does something that seems to break all the rules of nature. It vanishes. To find the Devil's Kettle, you have to follow the winding trails through Judge C.R. Magny State Park. The park hugs the rugged shore of Lake Superior, where ancient volcanic rock forms cliffs and canyons that echo with the calls of birds and the distant roar of water. The Brule River flows through this wilderness, tumbling over rocks and fallen logs, gathering speed as it approaches a dramatic drop. When you reach the falls, you see the river split in two at the top of a rocky outcrop. One stream flows over the edge and crashes down a steep cascade before rejoining the river below. But the other stream, the one that gives this place its eerie name, plunges into a deep, dark hole carved into solid rock. This swirling cauldron is the Devil's Kettle. The water disappears into the hole, never to be seen again. People stand at the overlook, peering down into the misty abyss, wondering where the water goes. Some toss in sticks or brightly colored ping pong balls, hoping to see them pop up somewhere downstream. But they never do. Year after year, the Brule River keeps pouring thousands of gallons of water every minute into that churning hole, and yet no one can point to the exact place where it comes back out. Stories and theories about the Devil's Kettle have swirled like the water itself. Some say it must connect to a hidden cave system beneath the park, a secret world of underground rivers and chambers yet to be mapped. Others wonder if the water might flow straight into Lake Superior through an unseen channel in the ancient volcanic rock. There are even old legends that claim the hole is bottomless, a doorway into the earth itself, where the river slips away and never returns. For decades, scientists and curious locals tried to solve the mystery. They poured colored dyes into the hole and waded downstream, hoping to spot a swirl of green or red in the flowing river. They dropped markers and logs into the kettle, only to watch them vanish into the roar. Nothing came back, no color, no sign, just the endless churn of water disappearing into darkness. The Devil's Kettle earned its name, honestly, a place where nature seems to cook up a trick that leaves even experts scratching their heads. But in recent years, geologists took another look at this strange place, with new tools and fresh ideas. They studied the rock that makes up this rugged land, a tough, ancient basalt born from volcanoes that erupted here millions of years ago. They measured the river's flow above the falls and compared it to the flow below, and what they found was a surprise. Their measurements showed that the same amount of water flowing into the Devil's Kettle comes out in the river below. No more, no less. This means the water must be rejoining the river somewhere nearby, slipping through cracks or tunnels in the rock that no human eye can see. The swirling hole is not a portal to another world or a bottomless pit. It is more like a drain that feeds the river right beneath the surface, where the channels are hidden by the ancient basalt. The science explains the puzzle, at least on paper, but standing there, watching the foaming waters spin into the earth, you can still feel a tingle of wonder. Why does the river split here, right at this one spot in the wild forest? How many centuries did it take for the pounding water to carve that hole into stone, hard as iron? What other secrets lie beneath your feet, just out of reach? The Devil's Kettle is more than a geological curiosity. It is a reminder that even in the age of satellites and sonar, some places still hold tight to their mysteries. It shows us that the earth can hide entire rivers inside itself, that water can flow unseen through the veins of rock, and that sometimes a question with an answer can still feel like a question when you stand in its presence. Local legends continue to swirl around the kettle. Some hikers swear they have felt the ground hum near the hole, like a distant drumbeat deep underground. Others say the spirits of the North Woods guard the secret, keeping the river's hidden path for themselves. Children laugh and toss stones into the hole, daring the water to spit them back out. It never does. If you ever find yourself walking the mossy trails of Judge C.R. Magny State Park, follow the sound of the river until you reach the overlook. Listen to the roar as the Brule splits in two, one path easy to follow, the other slipping away into the earth like a whispered promise. Lean on the railing, let the mist cool your cheeks, and remember that sometimes the best secrets are the ones that nature keeps close, hidden in a swirl of water and stone. As you drift off tonight, picture that restless river rushing through the forest, carving its way through time. See the Devil's Kettle, foaming and swirling, pulling the water down into a place you cannot see. Imagine the underground channels, dark and secret, carrying the river's story onward, a quiet riddle beneath the trees, waiting for the next curious mind to come along and wonder where the water goes. Lake Vostok, far below the coldest, harshest desert on Earth, hidden beneath more than 2 miles of solid ice, lies one of our planet's most secret places. Its name is Lake Vostok. It is so deep, so silent, and so cut off from the world above that it has been sealed away for more than 20 million years. Some people say it is a frozen time capsule. Others wonder if it holds life forms no human eye has ever seen. But one thing is certain, Lake Vostok is a place where Earth's magnetic mysteries and the limits of what we know begin to blur. To understand Lake Vostok, you first have to picture Antarctica, a vast white wilderness where icy winds howl over endless plains and jagged mountains rise like stone teeth through the ice. At the very heart of this frozen continent lies Vostok Station, a lonely Russian research base famous for recording the coldest temperature ever measured on Earth, minus 128 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a place so cold that metal can crack like glass and your breath freezes in midair. Yet directly beneath this forbidding outpost, an ancient body of water waits in the dark. Lake Vostok was first discovered in the 1990s when scientists studying radar images of the Antarctic ice sheet noticed something strange. Beneath the thick frozen blanket was a vast, smooth pocket, a liquid lake the size of Lake Ontario, more than 160 miles long and up to 30 miles wide. Despite the crushing weight of the ice above, the water stays liquid because of the pressure and warmth from geothermal heat deep within the Earth's crust. Trapped under the glacier for millions of years, it has been completely cut off from the atmosphere, untouched by the changing world above. What really makes Lake Vostok a puzzle for scientists is not just its age or its isolation, but the unusual magnetic readings they find there. As researchers mapped the lake from above, they noticed a giant magnetic anomaly, an area where the Earth's magnetic field dips and warps in a way they cannot fully explain. Some think it might be caused by the minerals in the rock beneath the lake. Others suspect there could be something unusual about the sediments lying at the bottom, perhaps holding metals or compounds that bend the magnetic field in unexpected ways. These strange readings spark all kinds of questions. What lies at the bottom of Lake Vostok that could cause such a powerful magnetic signature? Is it simply an unusual patch of rock, or could there be something buried beneath the ice, something that has not seen the light of day since long before humans ever walked the earth? Adding to the mystery is the possibility of life hidden inside the lake, because it has been sealed for so long. Scientists believe any organisms living there would have evolved in total darkness, under immense pressure, in water rich with oxygen but cut off from fresh nutrients. Could tiny creatures be swimming in that ancient water right now? If they exist, they might offer clues about how life could survive in extreme environments elsewhere, like on the icy moons of Jupiter or Saturn. Drilling down to reach the lake has been a massive challenge. The ice is so thick, and the fear of contaminating this pristine ecosystem so real, that scientists have spent decades planning how to collect samples without spoiling what they find. In 2012, Russian researchers finally broke through, recovering small samples of water and ice that had risen through the borehole. Some tests suggested the presence of tiny microbes, but debate continues over whether these were truly from the lake or just contaminants from the drilling process. No one yet knows exactly what secrets lie in those cold, inky depths, and the magnetic anomaly only adds to the questions. Some researchers believe the magnetic signal could help them map where the bedrock shifts or find ancient deposits of minerals. Others think it might hold clues to the history of Earth's shifting poles, since the magnetic field is always moving and changing over millions of years. But for now, Lake Vostok keeps its secrets well hidden. Imagine standing on the frozen surface above it. The wind cuts across the ice, carrying the sound of nothing but your own breath. Below your feet, a vast pitch-black lake stretches out, older than the human race, older than the last ice age, older than the rise and fall of entire continents. Somewhere in that silent water, strange currents swirl around sediments that have not moved for eons. And through it all, a magnetic hum slips through the rock and ice, just strong enough to puzzle the scientists who come here to listen. In the years to come, researchers hope to send more advanced probes down through the ice, collecting water, sediment, and maybe even glimpses of life that has evolved in perfect isolation. They dream of learning how this hidden lake works, how it stays liquid and alive while the world above remains locked in snow and ice. Some even imagine that what they find could help us look beyond Earth, giving us a better chance to search for life in the hidden oceans of other planets. As you drift off to sleep tonight, picture that lonely research station sitting under the coldest stars in the world. Imagine the warm glow of a single light flickering through a frosted window, while far below, Lake Vostok lies dark and waiting. Think of the water that has not touched the open air in 20 million years. Think of the strange magnetic field that hums through the rock, a quiet signal from deep inside our Earth, and let it remind you that sometimes the greatest mysteries lie not in the stars above, but in the secret places hidden right beneath our feet. Bermuda Triangle. Churkalran Triangle Senso Bethabi. Out in the blue stretch of the western Atlantic Ocean, there lies a place whispered about in hushed voices and scribbled into the margins of maps with a name that makes even seasoned sailors pause. It is the Bermuda Triangle, a stretch of sea that has tangled itself into legend, where ships vanish without a trace, planes disappear into cloudless skies, and compasses spin as if they have lost their sense of true north. The Bermuda Triangle, sometimes called the Devil's Triangle, covers a vast area of ocean, roughly bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. If you drew those 3 points on a map and connected them, you would see a loose triangle sitting right in the path of warm ocean currents, sudden storms, and some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. It is not marked by any sign, buoy, or lighthouse, but for centuries, stories have drifted from these waters like ghostly mist. Some of the earliest tales date back to Christopher Columbus. In his journals, Columbus wrote of strange lights flickering over the water, sudden bursts of flame and gas on the horizon, and a compass that refused to point in any one direction for long. He and his crew saw stars twist and dance, lights hovering where no land could be found. For sailors of that time, the sea was a place of mystery already. But this stretch, this triangle, seemed to hold more than its share of riddles. Over the years, the Bermuda Triangle gathered more stories. In the 20th century, one of the most famous was Flight 19. In December 1945, 5 U.S. Navy bombers flew out on a training mission from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The sky was clear, the sea was calm, but as they flew, the pilots began to report that their compasses were spinning wildly. They could not tell which way was east or west. Radio signals crackled with confusion, voices drifted in and out of static, and then, without so much as a splash, all 5 planes vanished. The rescue planes sent to find them disappeared too. Dozens of search ships combed the waters for weeks. No wreckage was ever found. Then came the tales of cargo ships and fishing boats that sent out cheerful calls in the morning and then were never heard from again. Some boats were found drifting empty, no sign of distress, no crew on board, no clue as to what might have happened in the calm blue waters of the Triangle. For a long time, these stories fueled wild ideas. Some believed the Triangle was a gateway to another world, a secret portal that swallowed ships and planes whole. Others spoke of powerful magnetic fields hidden deep under the ocean floor, warping compasses and pulling metal down into the depths. There were even theories about underwater pyramids or the lost city of Atlantis, its ancient energy still pulsing through the sea. But over time, scientists have offered more grounded explanations for what happens in this infamous patch of ocean. One clue comes from the simple fact that the Bermuda Triangle sits in one of the busiest shipping and flight corridors on Earth. Every day, countless planes and ships pass through its invisible lines. With so much traffic, accidents are more likely to happen here than in a quieter stretch of sea. Storms can appear without warning, blowing in with walls of rain and winds strong enough to knock a plane from the sky or roll a freighter over in seconds. Then there is the ocean itself. The Gulf Stream, a fast-moving current, flows through this region like a river within the sea. If a boat stalls or sinks, the powerful current can pull it far away from its last known position before help arrives. Wreckage can be scattered across hundreds of miles or dragged deep into underwater trenches where light does not reach and human eyes rarely look. As for the compass tales, there is some truth to the idea that the Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align in a strange way. This can cause compass readings to drift if pilots or sailors do not adjust their calculations. For explorers hundreds of years ago, sailing without modern tools, this could turn a simple trip into a nightmare of confusion and disorientation. Some researchers have also studied giant pockets of methane gas trapped beneath the ocean floor. If these gas bubbles are suddenly released, they can make the water above so frothy that it cannot support the weight of a ship, causing it to sink in moments. An aircraft flying through an unexpected methane burst could stall as its engines struggle for oxygen. While this is rare, it shows how the ocean itself can surprise even the best prepared traveler. So does the Bermuda Triangle really break the laws of physics? Not quite. The compasses that spin wildly, the ships that vanish, all can be explained by nature's hidden forces, the ocean's unpredictable moods, and the mistakes that humans sometimes make when facing them. But even with science in our hands, the stories continue to drift in like mist on the waves. Maybe it is because the sea has always been a place where the line between truth and legend is as shifting as the tides. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine a small boat gliding across the quiet water under a blanket of stars. The compass needle quivers just slightly as clouds gather on the horizon. A whisper of wind tugs at the sails, and deep below, the Gulf Stream flows on, carrying secrets from shipwrecks long forgotten. Somewhere out there, a radio crackles with a voice asking for directions that never come. The Bermuda Triangle reminds us that even in our modern world, there are places that keep their mysteries close, just out of reach, waiting for the next curious mind to wonder where the lost things go. Zone of Silence. Betba Sedaledo Bottle of Felons, Betad but the Pulled, Another Duppa An. Deep in the sun-baked plains of northern Mexico lies a place so quiet, so empty, that the silence itself feels like something alive. They call it the Zone of Silence, a patch of desert so mysterious that stories say radio signals vanish into thin air, compasses spin in circles, and strange things fall from the sky. To find the Zone of Silence, you have to travel far away from crowded cities and busy roads. You drive through the Chihuahuan Desert, where the land stretches wide and flat, broken only by ancient rock outcrops and scraggly bushes that cling to life under the searing sun. The sky here is a deep, endless blue by day and a sea of stars at night. There are no towns nearby, no glowing billboards, no towers buzzing with chatter. It is, some say, the perfect place for a mystery to hide in plain sight. The legend of the Zone of Silence began to grow in the 1970s when an American test missile launched from the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico went wildly off course. Instead of following its planned path, the missile veered south and crashed right in the middle of this lonely stretch of desert. When investigators arrived to recover the debris, they found their radios and walkie-talkies refused to work. Compass needles seemed to spin without finding north. Instruments that should have buzzed with clear signals stayed stubbornly silent. Word spread quickly. There was something odd about this land. Locals say the strange happenings didn't start with that missile. Long before, ranchers and travelers whispered about odd lights drifting across the desert at night. Some spoke of falling meteorites, stones from the sky that seemed to be drawn here like moths to a flame. Fossil hunters often find ancient sea creatures in the dry soil, proof that this desert was once covered by a vast ocean. But what makes the zone truly famous is its power to silence the world of sound. Stories say that when you stand in the heart of the zone, radios crackle and die, walkie-talkies go quiet, planes flying overhead sometimes lose contact with control towers for just a moment. Compasses that should point the way home twitch like confused insects. Some visitors claim to feel a hum under their feet, as if the desert itself is vibrating with an energy no one can see. Many people who come here are drawn by these mysteries. Scientists, adventurers, and the simply curious all make their way into the harsh landscape. They camp beneath the stars, listening for signals that never come. They test their radios again and again, hoping for static that might explain what is happening. And every so often, they find meteorite fragments glittering among the stones, tiny reminders that the sky above is always dropping gifts on this strange patch of Earth. But what do scientists think is really happening in the Zone of Silence? Is there truly something here that breaks the laws of physics, or is it another illusion, like so many other strange places where nature plays with our senses? One clue is that the zone sits on a special line known as the 27th parallel, the same latitude where the Bermuda Triangle is found far across the sea. Some researchers think this band around the Earth might have magnetic properties that affect radio waves and compasses in small ways. Others say the iron-rich rocks and large deposits of minerals buried under the desert soil could help block or distort signals. And these natural minerals might act like tiny shields, scattering radio waves and making them fade before they reach their destination. The shape of the land plays a part too. Hills and ridges can bounce signals away, breaking them up until they vanish into the hot desert air. It is not that the Zone of Silence swallows sound, but rather that the landscape confuses it, scattering waves in so many directions that they never come back in the same way they arrived. Still, science does not explain everything. There is something about standing in a place so quiet you can hear your own heart. In the Zone of Silence, the wind whispers secrets as it moves over the stones. Shadows grow long and strange when the sun dips low, and the stars overhead feel closer than anywhere else on Earth. Some visitors report seeing strange lights moving across the night sky, flickers that dart and hover without making a sound. Are they falling stars, wandering satellites, or something else? Then there are the stories of animals and plants that seem to thrive despite the harsh conditions. Rare species of desert turtles, unusual cacti, and lizards can be found here, adapted to the brutal heat and long dry months. For locals, the zone is more than just a place of silence. It is a reminder that life finds a way, even where humans struggle to make sense of things. If you ever find yourself in northern Mexico and follow the dirt roads that lead to the zone, you might stand there one evening as the last light fades behind the distant mountains. Your phone might lose its signal, your compass might twitch just slightly, and in that moment of quiet, you might feel the desert breathing around you, holding its secrets close. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine that silent sea of sand under a blanket of stars. Picture radio waves bouncing off rocks and minerals, fading into the earth. Picture the fossil shells buried under your feet, a memory of a time when this dry place was an ocean alive with creatures. The zone of silence reminds us that even in our age of satellites and signals, there are still corners of the world where nature asks us to listen, and sometimes to hear nothing at all. Balanced rock. In the heart of the American Southwest, where red stone towers rise like ancient sentinels, and the desert glows gold beneath a wide blue sky, there stands a giant rock that looks like it should have tumbled down long ago. Its name is Balanced Rock, and it sits inside Arches National Park in Utah, one of nature's most breathtaking galleries of stone arches, spires, and impossibly balanced shapes. Balanced Rock is exactly what its name promises. It is a massive boulder about as tall as a 10-story building, perched delicately on a slender pedestal of rock. From a distance, it looks like a giant egg set gently on a stand, so perfectly placed that the smallest push might send it crashing to the desert floor. But year after year, it stands firm, defying gravity, in a place where wind, rain, and time never stop working. Visitors come from all over the world to see this famous rock. They hike the short trail that winds through the rust-colored sand and desert scrub, craning their necks as they get closer. Up close, the boulder is even more astonishing. It weighs about 3 million pounds, roughly the same as 20 or 30 blue whales, yet it sits so lightly on its narrow base that it seems to float. Some people stand at the base, looking up with their arms spread wide, imagining what it would feel like if that massive rock ever lost its balance. Balanced Rock has been standing like this for thousands and thousands of years, shaped by forces that are invisible yet powerful: wind, water, freezing nights, and scorching days. To understand why it does not fall, you have to look back to a time when this desert was a different world. Long ago, much of what is now Arches National Park was covered by ancient seas. Over millions of years, layers of sand, silt, and salt were laid down, compressed, and turned into rock. Tectonic forces beneath the earth pushed and cracked these layers, forming ridges, domes, and deep faults. Over time, rainwater seeped into these cracks. When the desert nights turned cold, that water froze and expanded, prying the rock apart, piece by piece. Wind and rain continued the slow work, sculpting the stone into arches, columns, and balanced wonders. Balanced rock is what geologists call a hoodoo, a pillar of softer rock topped with a cap of harder rock. In this case, the pedestal is made of Entrada sandstone, which erodes more quickly than the boulder on top. The boulder itself is made of a stronger, more resistant stone called slick rock member. Because the harder rock protects the softer stone below, the pedestal remains standing even as the elements eat away at its base. This balancing act is not permanent, though. The same forces that created balanced rock will one day bring it down. Small bits of the pedestal break off every year as the wind carries sand that scours the stone like a giant sandblaster. During desert storms, rain seeps into tiny cracks. When temperatures drop at night, the water freezes and expands, slowly widening the cracks. Bit by bit, the pedestal becomes thinner and weaker until one day the weight of the boulder will be too much. It will shift, tilt, and tumble down in a thunderous crash that will echo through the desert canyons. Geologists know that change is always happening here. In fact, Balanced Rock once had a twin. Not far from the main formation stood another large boulder perched on its own pedestal, known as Chip Off the Old Block. In the winter of 1975, after centuries of standing watch, the smaller hoodoo finally gave way. It toppled and crumbled into rubble at the base, a reminder that even rocks can have their time run out. But until that day comes for Balanced Rock, it remains a beautiful lesson in patience and balance. Standing beneath it, you feel the desert wind on your face. You see the sun paint the rock in shades of pink and orange as it rises and sets. You hear the quiet hush of time at work, the soft scrape of sand on stone, the whisper of wind through the sagebrush. You can almost feel the steady heartbeat of the earth, shaping and reshaping its landscapes, one grain at a time. Some visitors like to see Balanced Rock as a symbol. To them, it is a reminder that even the heaviest burdens can sometimes rest on the thinnest supports, and that balance is something nature finds in its own way. Others see it as proof of the power of time, that even something so solid can be carved, polished, and balanced by forces so gentle we hardly notice them day by day. If you ever stand there at dusk, with the sky deepening from orange to purple, and the first stars blinking awake above the desert, take a moment to look up at Balanced Rock. Think about the millions of years it has waited, standing still while the world around it changes. Imagine the storms it has seen, the floods that once rushed through this dry land, the countless creatures that have wandered past its shadow. As you drift off to sleep tonight, picture that giant boulder resting calmly on its narrow pedestal, moonlight brushing its ancient surface. Remember that even things that seem impossible, a rock balanced on a stone needle, held steady by nothing but the quiet patience of nature, can exist in our world, if only for a little while, and maybe that is all the magic we need. Devil's Marbles. In the wide, sun-baked heart of Australia's Northern Territory sits a place where the earth seems to have played a quiet trick with stone. Scattered across the dusty red ground are giant granite boulders, some as big as houses, some small enough to cradle in your arms. They are called the Devil's Marbles, and they look as if some ancient giant once dropped a bag of stone marbles across the desert floor, leaving them to rest wherever they fell. To the local Warramungu, Katia, Aliawara, and Warlpiri people, these stones have always been more than just rocks. They call them Karlu, which means round boulders. For thousands of years, this sacred site has been a place for stories and ceremony, passed from one generation to the next under the burning outback sun and the endless sweep of stars. According to Dreamtime stories, the marbles were formed from the eggs of the rainbow serpent, a powerful spirit that shaped the land itself as it slithered through the ancient world. When you first see the Devil's Marbles, they do not look like they belong here. The surrounding land is mostly flat, dotted with spiky shrubs and scrubby trees that cling to life in the hot, dry air. But then, out of the red earth, these massive granite spheres rise up, balanced in precarious stacks or sitting alone as if they rolled away to rest. Some are cracked neatly in two, split so perfectly that they look like someone sliced them with a giant blade. Many visitors stand beside the biggest marbles and feel small. Some climb the short trails around them, tracing their fingers over the rough surface, warm from the sun during the day, and cool under the moon. And the same question echoes in every mind. How can stones like these be so round, so balanced, and so perfectly split when they have faced millions of years of harsh wind, rain, and desert heat? The answer, like so many of Earth's mysteries, begins far below our feet and stretches back through time. The granite that makes up the Devil's Marbles formed deep underground about 1.7 billion years ago. Back then, this part of Australia was buried beneath layers of rock. Over millions of years, water seeped through cracks and fractures in the stone. The water carried tiny grains of minerals that slowly broke down the rock from the inside out, carving smooth edges and rounded corners along the lines of weakness. This process, called spheroidal weathering, works like nature's slow-motion sculptor. As the granite expands and contracts with changing temperatures, baking under the hot sun by day, cooling quickly at night, the rock fractures along natural joints. Rainwater, though rare in this dry place, seeps into the cracks when it comes, widening them grain by grain. Sand carried by the wind scours the surface, smoothing the edges even more. Bit by bit, the blocky rock hidden beneath the ground transforms into round, egg-like shapes. When the softer rock around the granite wore away, these massive stone marbles were left behind on the surface, exposed to the open air at last. Some stand alone like solitary sentinels. Others perch in stacks so delicate you would think a single breeze might send them toppling over. In reality, the weight of each marble anchors it in place, and the friction between the stones keeps them from rolling away. Over time, some of the marbles have split cleanly in half. This happens when water seeps into hairline cracks and freezes during rare cold nights. The ice expands, pushing the rock apart. It is the same process that splits boulders on mountainsides or cracks roads in colder parts of the world. But here, it works so slowly that it feels like the earth itself is gently pulling the stones apart with patient hands. For the traditional custodians of Karlu Karlu, the Devil's Marbles are living pieces of a story that has no end. They hold the marks of ancestors, the shape of the land, and the connection between people and the world around them. Visitors are asked to respect the site, to walk carefully, and to listen for the stories that still echo among the rocks. Standing among the marbles, you can feel the weight of time. The stones glow red and gold when the sun rises and sets, catching the light like ancient jewels scattered across the land. At night, the sky above them fills with countless stars, the Milky Way arching overhead, while the marbles sit silently in the darkness, watching over a desert that has changed more slowly than any human life can truly grasp. Scientists may explain how these rocks formed, how wind and water shaped them, and why they balance so delicately on the desert floor. But knowing the science does not take away the wonder. Instead, it makes the place feel even more magical. A reminder that nature's slow work can create shapes so perfect they look like the playthings of giants. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine the Devil's Marbles resting quietly under the vast Australian sky. Picture the desert winds whispering through the gaps, the stars glinting off the rounded stones, and the ancient stories woven through every crack and shadow. Let it remind you that our earth is always sculpting, always shaping, always holding its secrets in the most unexpected places, if only we stop long enough to look and wonder. Gravity-defying rock. On the southeastern coast of India, where the salty breeze from the Bay of Bengal rustles palm leaves and ancient stone temples guard the shore, there sits a giant boulder, so perfectly balanced it feels like a dream. Locals call it Krishna's Butterball, a name that sounds almost playful, but one that hides a story as old as time and a mystery that continues to puzzle visitors and scientists alike. To see Krishna's butterball, you travel to Mahabalipuram, a small town known for its ancient rock-cut temples and sculptures that date back more than 1,000 years. This place has always been wrapped in stories from Hindu mythology. It is said that Lord Krishna, the butter-loving child god, once stole handfuls of butter from his mother's kitchen and rolled them across the hills for fun. This giant stone, resting impossibly on a gentle slope, is said to be one of those celestial butterballs that never melted away. When you stand before it, it feels as if the earth itself is holding its breath. The boulder is huge, about 20 feet high and 16 feet wide, and weighs roughly 250 tons. Yet it balances on a smooth, sloping rock face that would send most things sliding down in an instant. What makes it stranger is that only a tiny part of the boulder actually touches the ground. There it sits, resting on a slight point, stubbornly refusing to roll away. For generations, people have tried to move Krishna's butterball, but the boulder refuses to budge. Local tales say that more than 1,000 years ago, the Pallava king ordered his men to push it away because he feared it might roll down the slope and crush the temples below. 7 elephants were brought in, strong and patient, pulling and pushing with all their might, but the stone did not move an inch. The elephants, exhausted and bewildered, were led away, and the butterball stayed exactly where it had always been. Today, families and travelers gather around the giant rock to take photos, to stand in its shadow, and to try to understand how it defies gravity so calmly. Some children press their backs against it, pretending they can hold it up with just their tiny hands. Others place bottles or sticks at its base to see if they will roll under the stone. But no matter what they do, the butterball stands firm, as if glued to the hill by an unseen force. So what is really happening here? Is Krishna's butterball a sign of divine playfulness? A trick of the Earth's hidden powers? Or simply a happy accident of geology and physics working hand in hand? The answer, scientists say, lies in the way the rock was formed and how weather has shaped it over millions of years. The boulder is made of granite, a strong, hard rock that resists erosion better than softer stones. Long ago, this region was shaped by ancient volcanoes and slow-moving magma that cooled and hardened beneath the Earth's surface. Over countless ages, wind, rain, and temperature changes carved away the softer rock around the granite, leaving behind huge boulders like this one. Krishna's butterball is what geologists call an exfoliation dome. This means the boulder has layers like an onion. As the rock heats up in the sun and cools down at night, it expands and contracts, causing thin sheets to peel off over time. This slow process rounds off sharp edges, giving the butterball its smooth, rounded shape. The hill beneath it, made of the same granite, has been worn into a gentle slope by centuries of rainwater trickling down and wind blowing across its surface. Because the rock and the slope are both so hard, and because the point of contact between them is just right, friction keeps the butterball in place. Gravity tries to pull it down, but the balance is so perfect that it stays exactly where it is. It looks like it could tumble away at any moment, but it has survived earthquakes, storms, and countless attempts to push it free. For locals and visitors, knowing the science does not make the butterball any less magical. It is a reminder that nature can create wonders that look impossible to our eyes. It is also a place where ancient myth and modern geology stand side by side, both telling their own story about how this giant stone came to rest exactly where it sits today. If you ever find yourself in Mahabalipuram, take a moment to walk up the slope and stand beneath Krishna's butterball. Feel the rough warmth of the granite under your palm. Listen to the wind blowing in from the ocean. Look at the centuries-old carvings nearby, temples and statues cut from the same stone that holds this stubborn boulder in place. Imagine the people who gathered here 1,000 years ago, pointing at the rock in wonder, just as you do now. And when you lie down to sleep tonight, picture that giant butterball under the sun and stars, unmoving, unbothered by time or human hands. Let it remind you that sometimes the world's greatest balancing acts are not performed on tightropes or by human design. Sometimes they are simply gifts from nature, tiny marvels of physics and patience that wait quietly on a hillside, teaching us that not everything that seems impossible truly is. Brimham Rocks, rock tucked into the rolling hills and heather-covered moorlands of North Yorkshire, England. There is a place where the landscape looks like a forgotten playground of ancient giants. Here, enormous rocks stand stacked in impossible shapes. Balancing boulders rest lightly on narrow points. Arches reach toward the sky, and twisting columns seem to hold the weight of the world on stone shoulders. This place is called Brimham Rocks, and to stand among these formations is to step into a story that feels half fairy tale, half science lesson, and all wonder. Brimham Rocks has been drawing curious minds for centuries. Long ago, locals believed that giants must have built this strange garden of stone. Some said the shapes were carved by druids who gathered here for secret rituals under the moon. Others spun tales of trolls or goblins who came out at night to push and stack the boulders just to confuse travelers passing through the misty moors. When you first see Brimham Rocks, you might understand why people believed such things. Some stones balance delicately on top of narrow columns, like massive stone mushrooms or spinning tops frozen in time. Others lean at odd angles, looking like they could tip over with the slightest push, yet they stay steady through wind, rain, and countless human footsteps. There are rocks that look like animals, an eagle with outstretched wings, a bear sitting watchful, a crocodile resting its stony snout on the ground. All these shapes were formed not by giants or trolls, but by millions of years of nature's quiet, patient work. To understand how Brimham Rocks came to be, you have to travel far back in time, around 320 million years ago, when this part of England was not rolling countryside, but a vast river delta covered with sand and silt. Over countless years, layers of sand built up, compressing under their own weight to become gritstone, a coarse, rough kind of sandstone. This rock is tough, but not invincible. When the land rose and fell with the shifting of Earth's crust, cracks and faults formed in the gritstone layers. Wind, rain, frost, and ice found these cracks and began their slow work. Bit by bit, water seeped into tiny fractures. When the cold nights came, the water froze and expanded, pushing the cracks wider. Sand carried by the wind scraped the surface, wearing away softer parts of the rock. Over millions of years, what was once a flat, solid layer became a forest of bizarre, balanced shapes. The rocks that stand today are the stubborn pieces, the parts that resisted erosion, while everything around them wore away. Even now, the rocks are changing, but so slowly that it is almost impossible to see. Tiny grains fall away in storms. Water continues to find new cracks. On a warm day, the stones expand in the sun, and when the temperature drops at night, they contract again. This cycle repeats endlessly, shaping and reshaping the edges and curves. Walking among the rocks, you can feel the weight of this slow dance between stone and weather. Children clamber up the gentle slopes and hide in the cool shadows of arches. Climbers test their skills on the rough gritstone, their fingertips gripping the same tiny holds carved by wind and rain. Photographers wait for the golden light of sunrise or sunset to catch the shadows stretching across the moor, turning the stones into giant sculptures painted in pinks and oranges. Brimham Rocks is now protected by the National Trust, a reminder that nature's masterpieces deserve care so they can stand for generations to come. Signs gently ask visitors not to carve their names or chip away pieces as souvenirs. Instead, people are encouraged to look, wonder, and imagine what stories these stones might tell if they could speak. Some believe the shapes hold lessons for us. The Eagle Rock, with its outstretched wings, reminds us that even stone can appear to fly when we look at it with the right eyes. The Dancing Bear Formation stands on a broad base, balanced just so, showing that even the heaviest things can find equilibrium if they have the right foundation. Some formations seem to defy gravity entirely, perched on tiny pedestals that look too narrow to hold their massive weight, yet they do, year after year. Scientists understand the physics behind these balancing acts, but standing beneath them, it still feels like magic. It is the wonder that reminds us that our world is always changing, always reshaping itself in ways both dramatic and delicate. It is a lesson in patience, too, a reminder that great changes do not always happen in loud bursts, but in tiny, quiet moments repeated over ages. If you ever visit Brimham Rocks, try to come early or stay late, when the crowds have gone and the moorland grows silent. Listen to the wind rustling through the heather. Watch the shadows stretch and slide across the stone faces. Stand close to a rock that looks ready to tip and feel its ancient strength beneath your hand. In that stillness, you might hear the echo of the river that once laid down the sand, the hiss of the wind that carved these shapes grain by grain, and the heartbeat of a world that never truly stands still. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture Brimham Rocks under the soft blanket of a star-filled sky. Imagine giants and druids, wind and water, all shaping the stones together. Let it remind you that our earth is a patient artist, and sometimes the most unlikely balance is the one that lasts the longest. Salar de Uyuni. High in the heart of the Bolivian Andes lies a place where the line between earth and sky blurs so completely that it feels like stepping into a dream. This place is Salar de Uyuni, the world's largest salt flat. To stand there is to feel like you are standing on the edge of forever, where the ground beneath your feet becomes a mirror so vast and perfect that it reflects the heavens above without a single ripple or crack. Salar de Uyuni was born from the slow, patient work of ancient lakes that once covered this corner of South America. Long ago, these lakes were deep and full, fed by rain and mountain rivers. But over tens of thousands of years, the climate changed. The lakes shrank, dried up, and left behind a thick crust of salt, so much salt that today the flats stretch over 4,000 square miles, larger than some small countries. When you first arrive at Salar de Uyuni, the landscape seems almost too white to be real. Under the blazing sun, the salt crust shines so brightly it is like standing on a frozen sea of diamonds. Patterns cover the ground in endless hexagons and pentagons, where the salt crystals push up and out as they expand in the dry air. Some people say the ground looks like a giant turtle shell cracked into pieces. Others see it as a patchwork quilt stitched by the earth itself. But it is during the rainy season that Salar de Uyuni becomes something else entirely, something that feels like magic even when you know the science behind it. When the summer rains come, a thin sheet of water collects on the salt flat's perfectly smooth surface. The water is just deep enough to form a mirror that stretches as far as the eye can see. Mountains, clouds, and the endless sky above are copied so clearly that you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. Even the people walking across the salt seem to float between two worlds, their reflections trailing beneath them like ghosts. Travelers from every corner of the globe make the long journey to this remote place just to stand in that otherworldly mirror. They take photos that make it look like they are walking on the sky or standing on clouds. Some bring props, tiny figurines, toy dinosaurs, and use the vastness to play tricks with perspective. Others come to watch the sunrise or sunset when the colors turn soft and pastel and the mirrored world glows pink, gold, and lavender. Yet even when Salar de Uyuni looks like a place pulled from dreams, it is very real and full of surprises beneath its bright crust. Hidden below the salt is one of the world's largest reserves of lithium, a mineral now in high demand for the batteries that power our phones, laptops, and electric cars. This has brought new opportunities and challenges to the region. Some see the lithium as a blessing, a treasure that can help Bolivia grow. Others worry about how mining could change this fragile place that has been untouched for so long. For the people who call the salt flats home, families who harvest salt by hand, or guide travelers across the blinding white plains, Salar de Uyuni is more than just a mirror. It is their livelihood, their story, and a piece of their identity. They build small pyramids of salt, drying it under the relentless sun before packing it into bags to sell. Their trucks leave faint tracks across the flats, lines that seem to vanish into the horizon. Scientists too find secrets hidden in the salt. Fossils of ancient fish and plants tell stories of the prehistoric lakes that once shimmered here. Researchers study the unique ecosystem that is adapted to survive in such harsh conditions. Even flamingos, bright splashes of pink against the white salt, come here to nest during certain times of the year, finding pockets of briny water that still linger. Some travelers speak of the silence that settles over Salar de Uyuni. In a world filled with constant noise, the salt flats are a place where sound seems to disappear. There are no trees for the wind to rustle, no rivers to gurgle or rush, just you, the salt, and the endless dome of sky reflected at your feet. Some visitors stand for hours, lost in the vast stillness, feeling as though they are the only person left in the world. And when night falls, the salt flats reveal yet another side of their beauty. With no city lights for miles, the stars shine so brightly that they seem close enough to touch. Some nights you can see the Milky Way stretching in a river of light across the mirrored ground, a galaxy above and below all at once. Astronomers say Salar de Uyuni is one of the best places on Earth to watch the night sky. Many visitors camp there, wrapped in blankets against the chill, drifting off to sleep under a million stars reflected in the salt. If you ever find yourself standing in this place, feel the crunch of salt under your boots. Watch the clouds drift across your feet. Taste the dry air on your tongue, and remember that sometimes the earth hides its most beautiful wonders in the quietest places, places where sky and ground can vanish into each other, reminding us that the line between what is real and what feels like a dream can be as thin and clear as a sheet of rainwater on a bed of ancient salt. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture Salar de Uyuni under a soft dawn sky, a world where you could walk forever and never find an edge, where the heavens reach down to meet the earth, and for a moment, everything feels endless. Lake Hillier, in the Turijavt with the fall of Rolf Subterry, with the ferry, but cased with the Pax Nord, but to the Tricians Oredan Squared, the Tom Chival Hungry, Spiffend Odes, Beacon for Van Nauti. On a remote island off the southern coast of Western Australia, hidden behind a thin strip of sand and forest, lies a lake so unusual that it feels like stepping into a painting. Its waters are not blue or green or clear like you might expect. Instead, they shine the brightest, softest pink you could imagine, a perfect bubblegum hue that stays the same no matter the season, no matter the sky above. This is Lake Hillier, a lake so pink that even when you scoop its water into your hands or a bottle, the color does not fade. Lake Hillier rests on Middle Island, the largest of the islands that make up the Research Archipelago. From the sky, the view is breathtaking. You see the deep blue of the Southern Ocean surrounding the island, a ribbon of white sand and green eucalyptus trees hugging the shore. And there, nestled like a secret gem, is the pink lake glowing under the Australian sun. People have known about this lake for centuries, but its color never stops surprising those who see it for the first time. Sailors who explored these islands in the early 1800s wrote about the lake in their journals, describing how they could not believe their eyes. Even now, scientists and visitors stand at its salty shore and wonder the same thing. How does a lake stay so perfectly pink year after year? One of the things that makes Lake Hillier so intriguing is that no one fully agrees on exactly why its water is so vibrantly pink. Unlike some other colorful lakes in the world, Lake Hillier's pink does not change with the light or the weather. It does not turn different shades through the seasons. It is always pink, as if someone painted it and left it that way forever. Scientists believe the color comes from tiny organisms that thrive in the lake's extremely salty water. The leading suspect is a type of algae called Dunaliella salina. This tiny algae produces a red pigment to protect itself from the intense sunlight and high salt levels. When millions and millions of these algae float in the shallow lake, they tint the water a lovely rosy color. Other microorganisms, like certain types of halobacteria, tiny salt-loving bacteria, might also play a role. Together, these microscopic creatures create a balance that keeps the water pink. Some researchers even think the pink hue is partly due to how the salt crystals reflect light. But the truth is, no one has pinned down the full explanation. Even the best scientists admit that Lake Hillier keeps a little piece of its secret hidden under its shimmering surface. Lake Hillier is not very big compared to other lakes in Australia. It is about 600 meters long, that is less than half a mile, and only about 200 meters wide. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for with its unforgettable color. The lake is surrounded by a narrow rim of white salt crust, so pure it crunches under your feet like snow. Beyond the salt is a fringe of dark green paperbark and eucalyptus trees, their leaves rattling in the ocean breeze. And just a few steps farther is the roaring blue ocean, so close yet so different from the still pink waters of the lake. Because Lake Hillier is on an island that is hard to reach, only a few people get to see it up close. Many people fly over it in small planes or helicopters, marveling at how it stands out against the blues and greens that stretch for miles. From above, it looks like a pink drop of paint spilled onto the edge of the island. For many visitors, the lake feels like a reminder that our Earth still holds surprises, that not every question has a neat, tidy answer. Scientists can study the algae and bacteria, measure the salt levels, and analyze the light reflecting off the water. But standing at its edge, you can still feel a sense of wonder. How did this tiny lake come to be so perfectly pink? Why here on this quiet island in the middle of the ocean? And how has it held its color through countless storms, changes in climate, and the passing of time? Today, Lake Hillier is protected to keep its ecosystem safe. No one bottles its water or harvests its salt on a large scale. Visitors are not allowed to swim in it, both to protect the lake and because its high salt content could irritate your skin. But you can stand nearby, breathe in the fresh ocean air, and watch as the pink water laps gently at the white salt crust, doing what it has done for thousands of years. If you ever fly over Middle Island and see Lake Hillier glowing like a hidden gem below, you might imagine ancient sailors drifting past, catching sight of the pink water and scratching their heads. Or you might picture the millions of tiny algae and bacteria working quietly together to keep the lake wrapped in its rose-colored coat. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture Lake Hillier under the wide Australian sky. Imagine its still pink water shining softly under the sun by day and catching the light of the moon by night. Let it remind you that some places in our world do not need grand explanations to feel magical. Sometimes, a pink lake resting on an island at the edge of the ocean is enough to remind us how beautiful and strange our Earth can be, and that its secrets are always worth wondering about. Door to Hell. Well, in the heart of the vast Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, where sand dunes stretch endlessly under the blazing sun and the wind hums across barren plains, there is a place where the earth seems to burn with an unending fire. It is called the Door to Hell, a name that feels like something from an ancient legend, but this fiery pit is very real. For more than 50 years, it has burned night and day, a circle of flames licking at the desert sky. The story of how the Door to Hell came to be is part accident, part human curiosity, and part the unpredictable power of nature. Back in the early 1970s, Soviet geologists came to the Karakum Desert in search of oil and natural gas. They drilled deep into the ground, hoping to find new reserves that could fuel their growing industries. But when they struck a pocket of natural gas, the ground beneath their drilling rig collapsed, swallowing their equipment and leaving behind a gaping crater. At first, the scientists were relieved that no one was hurt, but soon they realized they had uncovered a bigger problem. The crater they had created was leaking methane gas, a flammable and dangerous greenhouse gas that could easily drift across the desert, harming people and animals. Fearing that the gas might spread and cause explosions or poison the air, the team made a decision that must have seemed simple at the time. They would set the crater on fire, hoping the flames would burn up all the gas in a matter of days. But the gas pocket they had tapped into was much larger than they realized. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into years, and now, more than half a century later, the Door to Hell still burns. Flames flicker and dance along the crater's edges, while the inside glows with an otherworldly orange light. At night, the flames can be seen from miles away, a ghostly beacon in the middle of an empty desert. Standing at the edge of the crater today, you feel the heat radiate against your skin, even when you keep a safe distance. The smell of burning gas drifts on the dry desert breeze. The ground beneath your feet is hard and cracked, as if scorched by an ancient dragon's breath. Some visitors say they feel as though they are peering straight into the underworld, a place where the earth opens up to reveal the fire that lives beneath our feet. The Door to Hell, officially known as the Darvaza gas crater, is about 230 feet across and roughly 65 feet deep. It is not the largest or deepest crater in the world, but its constant burning makes it one of the strangest. Few places show so clearly how the earth holds vast stores of energy underground, and how easily that energy can escape when people dig too deep without fully knowing what lies below. Despite the danger and its eerie appearance, the Door to Hell has become one of Turkmenistan's most unusual tourist attractions. Adventurous travelers make the long journey through the desert to see it for themselves. They pitch tents on the surrounding sands, sit by campfires, and watch the flames flicker against the night sky. Some stand in awe at the crater's edge, wondering how something so destructive can also be so strangely beautiful. Scientists have studied the site for decades, fascinated by how the gas continues to escape and fuel the never-ending fire. The physics behind the flames is simple but powerful. Natural gas seeps from deep underground, feeding the flames like an invisible hand. The fire burns at a steady temperature, consuming the methane before it can rise into the atmosphere. While this means less methane escapes as a greenhouse gas, it also means the fire continues with no sign of stopping. There have been discussions over the years about extinguishing the flames once and for all. Turkmenistan's government has at times announced plans to close the crater to protect the environment and recover the gas for energy. But so far, the door to hell keeps burning, its flames stubbornly licking at the sky, as if to remind us that once nature's hidden forces are released, they can be impossible to contain. For the people who live in the nearby villages, the door to hell is both a wonder and a warning. It is a symbol of how human curiosity and industry can dig deep, only to find that the earth has its own ideas. Some local stories speak of the crater as a place where ancient spirits dwell, guarding the desert's secrets. Others simply see it as proof that the world is full of surprises, both beautiful and dangerous. If you ever stand there under the vast Central Asian sky, you might feel the desert's silence all around you, a silence broken only by the hiss and roar of the flames inside the crater. You might imagine the drilling rig sinking all those years ago, the engineers watching the fire catch hold, never dreaming it would still burn long after they were gone. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, picture that fiery pit glowing under a canopy of stars. Imagine the orange flames flickering in the darkness, the shadows they cast dancing across the sand. Let it remind you that even the things we make by accident can take on a life of their own, and that our world holds forces we can ignite but never fully control. The Crooked Forest. Deep in the forests of western Poland, hidden behind ordinary pine groves and quiet country roads, there stands a small grove of trees that looks like something from a fairy tale or a dream. It is called the Crooked Forest, a name that feels just right for what you find when you wander into its shadows. At first, you might think your eyes are playing tricks on you. From a distance, the pines look normal, rising tall and straight like any other stand of trees. But as you step closer, you see the truth. Each tree curves sharply at its base, bending gracefully into a hook shape that points north, then straightening again as it grows toward the sky. It is as if someone pressed pause in the middle of a dance. Dozens of trees frozen mid-bow, their trunks bent at perfect, almost identical angles. There are about 400 of these crooked pines clustered together just outside the town of Gryfino, near Poland's border with Germany. Each tree is about 50 to 80 years old, young enough for a pine, but old enough to stand tall and steady. But no one can say for certain how they got this way. In a world where science can explain so many things, the Crooked Forest remains one of those gentle mysteries that refuses to be fully solved. Locals have told stories about this place for generations. Some say the trees were bent during a great snowstorm when they were saplings. Others whisper about tanks and heavy equipment rolling through during World War II, flattening the young trunks and forcing them to grow in strange shapes as they healed. Some villagers speak of the work of clever farmers who may have wanted the curved wood for furniture or shipbuilding. Yet there are no records, no old blueprints, no photographs to prove any of these tales. Just the trees themselves, quiet, patient, and beautifully bent. Scientists have studied the Crooked Forest for decades, searching for clues in the soil, the tree rings, and the gentle curves of each trunk. They know that trees can bend if they are weighed down by snow or pushed by strong winds, but the uniform shape of these pines, all bent the same way, at the same spot, makes the snowstorm theory unlikely. As for wind, it does not usually bend trees so cleanly and only at their base. Some researchers believe that humans must have played a part. Long ago in parts of Europe, woodworkers would bend young saplings by hand to create naturally curved timber for things like ship ribs, sleigh runners, or furniture frames. They would bend the tree when it was just a few years old, pin it down with stakes or heavy boards, and then let it grow for years until the trunk thickened around the curve. But why would someone do this here and then abandon the grove before using the wood? That question remains unanswered. Standing among the trees, it is easy to see why the crooked forest feels like something more than just an old experiment. When the light filters through the canopy, the bent trunks cast long, graceful shadows on the forest floor. In winter, snow settles softly along each curve, tracing the shape like white ribbons. In spring, the forest floor fills with moss and tiny flowers, wrapping the trees in a quiet green blanket. Visitors come from all over the world to walk the narrow paths that wind between the bent trunks. Children play hide and seek among the arches, giggling as they duck under the crooked branches. Photographers crouch low, trying to capture the perfect angle where the forest seems to ripple like a wave, frozen in time. And always, the question hangs in the air: who bent these trees and why? The crooked forest is not a grand sight like a mountain or a waterfall. It is not huge or loud, but it holds a special kind of magic, the kind that comes from a puzzle that refuses to be solved completely. It reminds us that even in our modern world, with our satellites and drones and all-knowing internet, some secrets remain tucked away in plain sight, waiting for curious minds to stand quietly and wonder. If you visit the crooked forest on a misty morning, you might feel that wonder for yourself. You might walk slowly between the trunks, running your hand along the rough bark where each bend begins. You might imagine the farmers who may have bent these saplings long ago, or the soldiers who might have marched through when the trees were still small and fragile. You might listen to the breeze as it moves through the needles, carrying stories no one has written down. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, picture those quiet pines under a silver moon. See the rows of trunks, curving gently at the base, reaching toward the sky like dancers mid-step. Let the crooked forest remind you that the world does not always give us neat answers. Sometimes it gives us gentle riddles, living shapes carved by time, chance, or human hands, and invites us to stand among them, breathe in the silence, and simply wonder. Stone spheres of Costa Rica, Vardik, Dispombe, Enfibulestre and Werkankernomp. Hidden in the lush green jungles and rolling pastures of southern Costa Rica, scattered across banana plantations and quiet backyards, lie some of the strangest relics ever found in the Americas. Hundreds of massive stone spheres, perfectly round and smooth, sitting exactly where people left them centuries ago. These giant balls of stone, some small enough to hold in your hands and others weighing as much as a small car, have puzzled scientists, travelers, and locals for decades. They are called the Dequees spheres, but most people simply call them the stone spheres of Costa Rica. When you see them for the first time, they almost do not look real. Some sit half buried in the grass, others rest alone in clearings, or line up in tidy rows like guardians watching over the land. The largest are over 6 feet wide and weigh more than 15 tons, yet they are so round and smooth that they seem carved by a master sculptor with tools far more advanced than anything we believe these ancient people had. The spheres were first brought to the world's attention in the 1930s when workers clearing land for banana plantations stumbled across them. Back then, the United Fruit Company was expanding its operations in Costa Rica's southern region. Bulldozers pushed through the jungle and suddenly began unearthing these heavy round stones. Curious workers tried to move them, roll them, even dynamite them open, hoping to find gold or treasure hidden inside. But the spheres held only stone. Their secret was their shape. Since then, archaeologists have discovered hundreds more. Some lie right where they were first carved and placed. Others have been moved to city parks or museums. Many locals once dragged them into gardens or in front of houses as symbols of good luck, never realizing they were handling priceless pieces of their country's ancient story. So who made the stone spheres of Costa Rica, and how did they shape them so perfectly without modern tools? The answer begins with the Diquis people, an ancient civilization that flourished in the region long before Europeans arrived. Between around 600 and 1500 AD, the Diquis built villages, carved stone statues, and arranged the spheres in mysterious patterns. But they left behind no written language, no blueprints, and no records explaining why they made these stones. Most of the spheres were carved from gabbro, a tough, dark igneous rock that had to be quarried from nearby hills. Smaller ones were sometimes made from limestone or sandstone. Archaeologists believe the Diquis shaped them by hand, chipping away with harder stones like hammerstones, then polishing the surface with sand, clay, and water. But even with this explanation, the sheer perfection of the biggest spheres makes many people shake their heads in wonder. It would have taken tremendous patience, skill, and teamwork to make even one sphere, let alone hundreds. Then there is the question of how they moved them. Some stones had to be rolled or dragged for miles through thick rainforest and across rivers. How did the Diquis transport these massive stones without wheels, cranes, or modern tools? Some researchers think they might have rolled the spheres on logs or pulled them with ropes. Others believe they built wooden sledges to slide the stones across wet clay. But like so much about these spheres, no one can say for certain. Perhaps the greatest mystery is why they made them at all. Some believe the spheres marked the homes or gathering places of important leaders. Others think they were symbols of power or status. The bigger the sphere, the greater the prestige. A few researchers suggest they might have been arranged in lines or circles to align with the stars or the sun, turning the landscape into an ancient calendar. But the thick jungle has long since swallowed any clear patterns, leaving behind only the stones themselves, scattered like clues in a forgotten riddle. Standing before one of these massive spheres, it is easy to see why they still capture people's imaginations. The stone feels cool and solid under your hand. Its shape is so perfectly round that you find yourself turning it over in your mind, imagining the people who once chipped at it for days and nights under the canopy of trees. You picture the families who lived in nearby villages, the rituals they might have held around the spheres, the songs or stories they passed down about the stones that watched over their homes. Today, many of the spheres have been moved to safe places where they can be protected and studied. In 2014, UNESCO declared the stone spheres of the Diquis a World Heritage Site, recognizing that they are not just beautiful artifacts, but part of a story that connects the people of Costa Rica to their ancestors. Some communities are working to return the spheres to their original locations, hoping to piece together the puzzle of how they were arranged and what they might have meant. If you ever find yourself walking through the warm, humid air of Costa Rica's southern plains, keep an eye out for a round shape resting in the grass or half buried near an old stone mound. Imagine the careful hands that carved it, the strong arms that rolled it, the curious minds that once gathered around it, and remember that our world still holds secrets that no one has fully explained. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture those ancient spheres resting quietly under a canopy of stars and broad-leafed trees. Let them remind you that sometimes the greatest wonders are not flashy or loud. They are simple shapes carved by human hands, waiting patiently for someone to stand beside them and wonder why. Yonaguni Monument with off the far southwestern coast of Japan, where the East China Sea meets the Pacific Ocean, there is an underwater wonder that has captured the imagination of divers, scientists, and dreamers for decades. It is called the Yonaguni Monument, a massive stone formation that lies beneath the clear blue waters near Yonaguni Island, the westernmost inhabited island of Japan. To some, it looks like the lost ruins of an ancient city swallowed by the sea. To others, it is a perfect example of nature's patient hand, sculpting stone into shapes that fool the human eye. The Yonaguni Monument first came to the world's attention in 1986. A local diver named Keiichiro Aratake was exploring these waters, which are famous for their schools of hammerhead sharks. As he swam deeper, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks: massive stone terraces, flat surfaces, sharp edges, and steps that seemed carved with purpose. It looked too precise, too straight, too organized to be random rock. When word spread, more divers came to see it for themselves, each one surfacing with the same wide-eyed question: could this really be man-made? To imagine the monument, picture a giant rock formation about 80 feet long and 20 feet high, sitting about 25 meters under the waves. It is made of sandstone and mudstone, the same types of rock that make up much of Yonaguni Island's rugged coastline. But what sets it apart are its features: large flat platforms, long straight ridges, and wide steps that look like the stairs of an ancient ziggurat. Some divers describe swimming along narrow passageways that feel like hallways, and around corners that look as though they belong in the ruins of a sunken temple. For people who believe the Yonaguni Monument is a lost ruin, this discovery is thrilling. Some think it could be part of a city built by a forgotten civilization, a place that existed thousands of years ago when sea levels were lower and Yonaguni was connected by land bridges to other islands in the Ryukyu chain. One researcher, Professor Masaaki Kimura, has spent years studying the site. He believes the monument shows signs of ancient human carving, chisel marks, straight walls, and even what he claims might be steps, roads, and an ancient stadium. He calls it Japan's Atlantis. Local legends add to the mystery. The islands near Yonaguni have old stories about a kingdom swallowed by the sea, a place called Mu, a mythical lost continent that some believe existed in the Pacific before sinking beneath the waves in a single catastrophic event. If the Yonaguni Monument really is man-made, it might be a remnant of this lost world, hidden for thousands of years beneath the ocean's currents and tides. But not everyone agrees. Many geologists believe the Yonaguni Monument is a beautiful natural wonder, shaped by the forces of wind, water, and earthquakes over millions of years. They explain that the rock here is made of layers that naturally break along straight lines, creating flat surfaces and sharp angles when the rock fractures. Earthquakes, which are common in this region, can shift these layers, tilting them into stair-like formations. Powerful ocean currents then sweep away loose debris, leaving behind the clean edges that look so much like steps or walls. To these scientists, the monument is proof not of a lost city, but of how nature can create patterns that feel familiar to the human eye. Our minds are wired to see shapes and order, faces in clouds, animals in stars, or cities in underwater rocks. It is what makes us human, this deep desire to find stories, even in stone. Divers who visit the Yonaguni Monument feel the pull of both ideas. As they drift along its terraces, they run their hands over the rough stone, tracing the edges of what might be ancient steps or simple fractures. They swim through archways that could be doorways or just gaps in the rock, and always the question bubbles up in the quiet of the deep. Did people build this, or did nature do it all? Some divers report seeing markings they believe look like carvings, symbols, or even what they describe as faces, worn smooth by centuries underwater. Others claim to have found stone roads leading away from the main structure, but so far, no tools, pottery, or other artifacts have been found in the immediate area, nothing that would prove beyond doubt that people once lived and worked here. The debate continues, a gentle tug of war between those who see the lost past and those who see nature's silent artistry. If you ever find yourself on Yonaguni Island, you might stand on its rocky shore and look out at the vast shifting sea. Imagine the monument waiting beneath the waves, ancient, massive, and silent. Think about the divers who slip below the surface each day, bubbles rising as they drift along stone corridors that may or may not hold the memory of a civilization long gone. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture the Yonaguni Monument, resting in the quiet deep. See the light from the sun filtering down through the clear water, dancing across the steps and terraces. Imagine the timeless ocean sweeping over its edges, keeping its secrets safe for a little longer. Let it remind you that our world still holds places that lie just out of reach, half in our imagination, half in the depths, and sometimes the truth is not as important as the wonder of asking what if. Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath. On the dusty plains of the Indus River Valley, where the heat shimmers off baked mud bricks, and the river once brought life to one of humanity's earliest cities, lie the quiet ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. This ancient city's name means Mound of the Dead Men, a name that hints at how long it has stood empty, forgotten, then found again beneath layers of earth. Yet among these sun-baked ruins sits something so surprising, so ahead of its time, that it still makes people wonder how much our ancestors really knew about the art of building cities. It is called the Great Bath, a large, carefully planned pool at the very heart of Mohenjo-Daro, built more than 4,500 years ago. Some people say it is the oldest public water tank in the world. Others see it as proof that the people of the Indus Valley civilization were far more advanced than we once believed. To stand at the edge of the Great Bath today is to look down into a rectangle of stone and brick that feels almost modern in its design. The pool is about 39 feet long, 23 feet wide, and around 8 feet deep. Wide steps lead down on each end, inviting people to walk calmly into the water. The floor and sides are lined with carefully fitted bricks, sealed tight with a kind of natural tar called bitumen, a waterproofing trick that still works today. Around the pool are small rooms that might have been changing rooms or places for people to rest after their ritual bath. When archaeologists first uncovered the Great Bath in the 1920s, they were stunned. How could people so ancient build something so clever, so beautifully designed for both comfort and function? But the Great Bath is just one piece of what makes Mohenjo-Daro so remarkable. All around this ancient pool, the city's remains whisper the story of a civilization that understood water, waste, and cleanliness in ways that would not become common in other parts of the world for thousands of years. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the Indus Valley civilization, a society that flourished alongside Egypt and Mesopotamia, but left behind no grand pyramids or towering ziggurats. Instead, its greatness lies in the details: straight streets laid out in a perfect grid, sturdy brick houses with indoor bathrooms, and a vast network of drains and sewers that carried waste away from homes and public places. Some homes even had private wells, carved deep into the ground to bring fresh water up to each family's doorstep. The Great Bath sits at the center of this carefully planned city. Historians believe it was not just for keeping clean, but for something deeper: ritual purification. Many ancient cultures saw bathing as a way to wash away not just dirt, but spiritual impurities. Standing in the cool water under the open sky, people may have felt a sense of connection to each other and to whatever gods they believed watched over their city. Yet, for all its mystery, the Great Bath was also practical. To keep the pool clean, the builders lined it with a thick layer of tar to stop water from leaking out. They designed clever drainage channels to empty the pool when needed. Nearby wells and a massive water tank likely supplied the fresh water. Even today, engineers study these ancient systems, amazed by how they balance simplicity and effectiveness. When you wander the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro now, you see the wide streets and carefully laid bricks. You see the ancient drains running along the sides of roads, some still carrying rainwater thousands of years after they were first dug. You see the remnants of homes where families once cooked, laughed, and drew water from their own courtyards. And at the center of it all, you see the Great Bath, a quiet reminder that these ancient people understood the importance of water, health, and community life. Despite its brilliance, Mohenjo-Daro holds many secrets still. Why did such an advanced city vanish? There are no signs of war, no ruins of burnt houses. Some believe floods may have buried the city again and again. Others point to changes in the Indus River's path, cutting off the lifeline that made this place thrive. Slowly, the people drifted away, leaving behind their brick streets and their perfect baths for the winds and sands to cover. It was not until the 1920s that Mohenjo-Daro's secrets began to come back to light. Excavators brushed away layers of dirt, brick by brick, discovering streets, wells, granaries, and the Great Bath, still standing patiently, waiting to tell its story. Today, the site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and yet it remains fragile, threatened by time, weather, and the salty water that still seeps into its ancient bricks. If you ever visit Mohenjo-Daro, you might stand at the edge of the Great Bath in the early morning when the sun first strikes the yellow bricks. You might close your eyes and imagine the people who once stepped down those steps into cool, clear water. You might picture the families drawing water from the wells, the children splashing, the quiet moments when people pause to cleanse themselves in more ways than one. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture that ancient pool under the starlit sky. Let the Great Bath remind you that even thousands of years ago, people understood that water connects us to each other, to our past, and to the land we call home. Some wonders do not reach for the heavens. Some lie quietly beneath our feet, waiting for us to listen to what they have to say. Mount Roraima, Rome, far in the northeastern corner of South America, where the borders of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet, there rises a mountain so strange and beautiful that it feels like stepping into another world. This mountain is called Mount Roraima, a massive tabletop that soars above the surrounding rainforest. Its sheer cliffs wrapped in drifting clouds that make it look like an island floating in the sky. Mount Roraima is not like ordinary mountains with pointed peaks or rolling slopes. It is a tepui, an ancient flat-topped mountain formed from some of the oldest exposed rocks on Earth. Its summit sits over 9,000 feet above sea level, but what makes it truly spectacular are its vertical walls, which drop straight down for hundreds of feet to the jungle below. Climbing up these cliffs without a special trail is nearly impossible, which is part of what makes Mount Roraima feel so untouched, like a real-life lost world. In fact, the mountain inspired just that idea. In 1912, British author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle imagined a hidden plateau full of dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures in his adventure novel, The Lost World. He based his vision on stories of Mount Roraima, a place so remote and unique that it still feels like it could hide mysteries waiting to be discovered. Mount Roraima is millions of years old. Geologists believe the sandstone that makes up its sheer walls formed nearly 2 billion years ago, long before the dinosaurs, long before the continents even looked like they do now. Wind and rain slowly carved the rock into cliffs and towers, leaving behind the flat summit that stands like a fortress above the rainforest. The journey to reach the top of Roraima is not easy, even today. Hikers trek for days through dense jungle and across wide savannas, following muddy trails and fording rivers. Finally, they reach a natural ramp on one side of the mountain, the only route that allows people to scramble up to the top without climbing gear. When you finally step onto the summit, it feels as if you have arrived on another planet. Up there, the landscape is like nothing you have ever seen. Strange rock formations rise like giant mushrooms, castles or towers. Pools of clear water collect in natural basins, reflecting the ever-changing sky. Mist and clouds drift across the flat surface, sometimes clearing to reveal breathtaking views of the endless forest far below. It rains almost every day on Mount Roraima, and small waterfalls spill over the edges of the cliffs, disappearing into the clouds. But perhaps the most magical thing about Roraima is what lives on top, because the mountain is so isolated, cut off from the jungle below by its sheer walls. Plants and animals up there have evolved in their own way, like an island in the sky. Many species found on the summit live nowhere else on Earth. Tiny frogs with skin the color of the stones, rare orchids that cling to cracks in the rock, insect-eating plants that survive in the nutrient-poor soil. All of these thrive in the misty gardens of Roraima. Scientists call these isolated ecosystems islands of evolution, just like the Galapagos Islands in the ocean. Tepuis like Mount Roraima are natural laboratories that show how life can change when it is cut off from the rest of the world. The plants and animals here are tough. They endure cold nights, constant rain, and fierce winds that whip across the summit. Local indigenous peoples, the Paimon, Kapan, and Arakuna, have lived near Mount Roraima for centuries. To them, the mountain is sacred. In their stories, Roraima is the stump of a giant tree that once held all the world's fruits and life. A mighty hero, angry at the selfishness of the tree's guardian, cut it down, and when it fell, floods covered the land and formed rivers. The mountain that remains is the tree's stump, reaching into the sky. Standing at the top of Roraima, with the mist swirling around you and the ground damp under your boots, you can feel why these stories endure. The place feels timeless, like a window into the Earth's deep past. You might watch a cloud drift by, carrying the echo of the rain. You might hear the quiet drip of water into a pool, or the soft rustle of a tiny frog slipping under a rock. It is a silence filled with life, hidden in every crevice and hollow. Some people spend a night on the summit, sleeping in natural rock shelters called hotels, shallow caves that protect them from the rain. When dawn comes, they wake to see the sun rising over the endless carpet of green below, the cliffs catching the first light as if the mountain itself is waking up. If you ever find yourself looking out over Mount Roraimia's edge Remember that this place has stood here long before any of us. It has watched oceans come and go, rivers carve new paths, and forests grow tall beneath its watchful cliffs. And it will stand long after we are gone, its strange gardens in the clouds tending their quiet secrets. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, imagine Mount Roraima's lonely summit, wrapped in mist. Picture the strange flowers blooming in the rain, the tiny frogs calling out across the stones, the waterfalls slipping silently into the clouds below. Let it remind you that even in our busy world, there are places so old and untouched that they still feel like a dream, a piece of the earth's memory waiting for us to see, wonder, and leave just as we found it. Lake Natron, in the far north of Tanzania, where the vast East African Rift Valley stretches under the blazing sun and the winds whisper through dry grasslands, there lies a lake so strange and beautiful that it feels almost otherworldly. Its name is Lake Natron, a shallow, shimmering body of water that hides a secret in its brilliant, glassy surface. This is a lake that turns animals to stone. Of course, they do not truly turn to stone in an instant like a fairy tale curse. But what happens here is still so remarkable that it has puzzled travelers and scientists alike for years. Lake Natron's waters are incredibly alkaline, more caustic than most lakes on Earth. This means they have a very high pH level, sometimes close to that of ammonia or bleach. If you dipped your hand in for a moment, you would not feel much, but staying too long could burn your skin. The lake gets its name from natron, a naturally occurring mixture of baking soda and other salts that have been used since ancient times for cleaning and even mummification. Here, the water's chemistry comes from the land itself. Minerals from the surrounding volcanic hills, including the nearby active volcano Oldonyo Lengai, wash down into the lake with rain and underground springs. Over time, the water evaporates under the intense African sun, leaving behind a thick crust of salt and minerals that keeps the lake's waters harsh and full of life in its own way. When you see Lake Natron from above, its surface seems painted in wild, vivid colors, streaks of red, orange, and pink, where salt-loving microorganisms thrive in the hot, alkaline water. These tiny life forms, like cyanobacteria, give the lake its unusual color and attract flocks of flamingos. It may seem surprising, but despite its harsh conditions, Lake Natron is one of the world's most important breeding grounds for lesser flamingos. They build their nests on small, safe islands of salt and mud, protected from predators by the caustic water that keeps most animals away. But what about the creatures turned to stone? Scattered along the lake's salty shores, you may come across the perfectly preserved remains of birds, bats, and other small animals. They look like eerie statues, wings outstretched, beaks open, feathers or fur still intact, covered in a thin white crust that makes them appear as if they have been carved from marble. The sight can feel haunting, yet it is simply nature's way of preserving life in a place that can be both beautiful and deadly. When an animal falls into Lake Natron's waters or dies close enough for the waves to wash over it, the minerals in the water begin to work their strange magic. The alkaline salts draw moisture from the body, slowing decay and preserving its shape. Over time, the minerals harden around feathers, fur, or skin, leaving behind a petrified figure that looks frozen in time. It is not true stone, but it feels like a glimpse into a myth, a place where nature holds on to life's final moments and displays them for all to see. Photographers and filmmakers have captured these ghostly remains, sparking both fascination and shivers. Some people find it unsettling, others see it as proof of how nature can surprise us, with its power to create something so unexpectedly striking. Despite its harshness, Lake Natron is full of life in its own way. The flamingos that gather here every year to breed rely on the lake's unique chemistry. The salty, alkaline water supports massive blooms of the algae that the flamingos feed on, giving them their bright pink color. For the flamingos, this place of death for some creatures is a nursery for their young. The shallow, warm water keeps eggs safe on tiny mud islands, far from the reach of predators that cannot cross the lake's caustic surface. Local communities have learned to live with the lake's secrets too. The Maasai people, who herd cattle in the surrounding plains, know its dangers and its gifts. They tell stories of the lake's spirits and its power to protect the flamingos, while its mineral deposits can sometimes be used for small local trades. The volcano nearby, Oldoinyo Lengai, is called the Mountain of God in the Maasai language, adding to the sense that this whole landscape is something sacred, a place where Earth's forces feel raw and close. If you ever visit Lake Natron, you might stand at its edge and watch the sunlight dance across its bright, rippling surface. You would see the long lines of flamingos moving gracefully through the shallows, their pink feathers reflected in the strange colors of the water. You might spot a white statue-like bird lying in the salt flats, forever frozen in its final pose. And you would feel deep in your bones how our planet can create beauty and danger side by side. As you drift off to sleep tonight, picture Lake Natron under the wide African sky, a place where bright colors shimmer, where life and death weave together in a strange dance, and where the earth reminds us that it can hold on to secrets that look like something out of a legend. Let it remind you that our world's greatest wonders do not always lie in grand cities or towering mountains. Sometimes they rest quietly on the shores of a forgotten lake, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, one small miracle at a time. Blood Falls, at the edge of the coldest, driest place on Earth, where snow and ice stretch to the horizon and the wind howls across frozen plains, there lies a sight so strange that it looks like something from another world. This place is called Blood Falls, a deep red waterfall that seeps out of the Taylor Glacier in Antarctica, staining the pure white ice around it with streaks that look like frozen rivers of blood. Blood Falls sits in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, one of the few places in Antarctica that is not buried under a thick blanket of snow and ice. Here, the ground is mostly bare rock and gravel, the wind blowing so fiercely that moisture in the air simply disappears. In this harsh and lifeless landscape, the Taylor Glacier creeps forward, a massive river of ice slowly grinding its way through the valley, and from the glacier's base, the red water flows, trickling down the frozen cliff and spreading across the white ice like a splash of paint. When early explorers first stumbled upon Blood Falls in the early 1900s, they were baffled. To them, it looked as if the glacier itself was bleeding, a shocking burst of color in a land where almost everything else is white, blue, or gray. For years, people wondered what could cause ice to bleed like this. The answer, as it turns out, is a perfect example of how nature can hide its secrets for thousands of years, only to reveal them in the most unexpected ways. Deep beneath the Taylor Glacier lies a hidden reservoir of ancient water, a pocket that has been trapped under the ice for millions of years. This subglacial lake is cut off from sunlight and air, isolated in complete darkness and cold. Over time, the water in this hidden lake has become rich in iron, the same element that makes our own blood red. But why does the water come out red instead of clear? When the salty, iron-rich water pushes its way out of the glacier and meets the air for the first time in millions of years, a simple chemical reaction takes place. The iron in the water reacts with the oxygen in the atmosphere and rusts, just like an old nail left out in the rain. This rusty iron gives the water its deep red color. So what looks like blood pouring from the glacier is actually ancient, salty, rust-stained brine flowing free at last. Scientists find blood falls fascinating for more than just its eerie beauty. That hidden pocket of water beneath the glacier holds tiny, hardy microorganisms that have survived for ages in a place with no sunlight, no fresh air, and hardly any warmth. Studying these microbes helps researchers understand how life might exist in extreme environments, not just on Earth, but perhaps on frozen worlds far away, like Jupiter's icy moon Europa or Saturn's Enceladus. In a way, Blood Falls acts like a natural time capsule. The water that trickles out today carries clues about what Earth's climate was like millions of years ago, before thick ice sheets covered Antarctica. Scientists sample the water and the microbes it holds, looking for secrets about how life adapts and how our planet's ancient history is locked away in places we can barely reach. For those who visit this remote part of Antarctica, mostly scientists and researchers, standing before Blood Falls is a humbling experience. Imagine the bitter wind biting at your face as you stand in front of the glacier's towering blue wall. You watch the red water seeping out, staining the ice like a slow-motion painting that never freezes solid despite the extreme cold. You realize that what you see has been happening, drop by drop, for thousands of years, long before humans ever stepped foot here. Even more amazing is that Blood Falls flows all year round. Unlike many other waterfalls that freeze in winter, this one stays liquid because its water is so salty that it resists freezing, even in temperatures far below zero. It is like the glacier's secret heartbeat, pulsing out its story through a thin red stream in a place where most life cannot survive. There is no other place quite like it. Blood Falls reminds us that even the coldest, driest desert on Earth can hide pockets of life and color. It shows us that the world is full of wonders that defy our expectations, that sometimes what looks like a wound is actually a window into Earth's deep history. If you ever find yourself looking at photos of Blood Falls or reading about its iron-rich stream, close your eyes and imagine standing there. The endless white of the glacier spreads before you, the sun glinting off the ice. In the middle of all this pure frozen silence, a streak of rusty red glows like a scar that never heals, a reminder that even the most lifeless places can surprise us with signs of life. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture that lonely waterfall at the end of the world. Let it remind you that hidden beneath even the coldest surfaces, life finds a way. Sometimes it waits patiently, locked in the dark for millions of years, only to spill out in a bright rush that paints the ice and carries its story across time. Devil's Sea. For far off the coast of Japan, where the Pacific Ocean stretches deep and blue beyond the sight of land, there is a stretch of water that has been whispered about for centuries. Some call it the Dragon's Triangle. Others know it as the Devil's Sea. Like the infamous Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic, this place has earned a shadowy reputation as an area where ships vanish, compasses spin wildly, and strange phenomena drift just beyond the edge of what science can easily explain. The Devil's Sea lies roughly between Japan and the islands of Bonin, including Guam and the northern tip of the Philippines. It is an area marked by strong currents, shifting weather, and deep ocean trenches that plunge thousands of feet beneath the surface. For centuries, fishermen and sailors have spoken of boats disappearing without a trace, stories passed down from father to son, each one adding a layer of mystery to these restless waves. One of the earliest records of the Devil's Sea comes from Japanese folklore. Long ago, sailors told tales of a massive dragon that lurked beneath the waves, waiting to pull unsuspecting ships down into its underwater lair. According to these old legends, the sea would sometimes boil and bubble, as if the dragon was stirring in its sleep. Flocks of seabirds would suddenly vanish, boats would drift off course without warning, and when storms rose out of nowhere, the dragon's presence was said to be close by. As centuries passed, these stories gave the region its other name, the Dragon's Triangle, a place where nature itself seemed to play tricks on even the most seasoned sailors. But what do we know about the Devil's Sea today? Is there any truth behind the myths, or are these stories simply the echoes of fear in a dangerous patch of ocean? One thing is certain, the Devil's Sea sits in a part of the world that is geologically alive. Beneath these waves lies the Pacific Ring of Fire, a horseshoe-shaped belt of volcanic activity and shifting tectonic plates that circles the Pacific Ocean. Here, underwater volcanoes rise from the seafloor, some dormant, some still active. They release gases and bubbles that can cause sudden changes in water density, which might weaken a ship's buoyancy enough to make it sink with hardly a splash. Some researchers believe that the stories of disappearing ships could be partly explained by these underwater volcanoes. In the 1950s, a Japanese research vessel called the Kaiomaru no 5 sailed into the Devil's Sea to study one of these undersea volcanoes. It vanished along with its crew of 31 scientists and sailors. Later searches found only floating debris, no sign of the ship itself. That single event rekindled the old legends and made people wonder, could there really be something here that science cannot yet fully see? Another strange feature of the Devil's Sea is its magnetic anomalies. Sailors have long reported that compasses can behave unpredictably in this region. A compass that should point steadily north might drift, spin, or freeze altogether. This is not unheard of in other parts of the world, where large deposits of iron ore or volcanic rocks rich in magnetic minerals lie beneath the Earth's crust. In these spots, the natural magnetic field can be distorted, confusing navigation instruments that people trust to keep them safe. Add to this the strong, unpredictable weather. The Devil's Sea sits along the path of powerful typhoons that roar through the Pacific each year, stirring up waves as high as houses, and winds strong enough to tear a ship apart. Combine fierce storms, hidden volcanoes, and strange magnetic quirks, and you have a place where even modern ships must stay alert. Despite all this, the Devil's Sea is not simply a place of fear and caution. It is also an area of remarkable beauty and natural richness. Below the surface, coral reefs flourish in shallower waters, home to colorful fish and sea turtles that drift with the currents. Migrating whales and dolphins often pass through, traveling ancient routes guided by instincts we still do not fully understand. For coastal communities in Japan and nearby islands, the sea is both a provider and a mystery, giving fish and livelihoods while guarding secrets deep in its trenches. Today, scientists continue to study the region. Underwater surveys map the seafloor, tracking volcanic activity and measuring how gases and currents might shift over time. Some researchers even look to the Devil's Sea for clues about how life might survive in extreme conditions, a reminder that what seems dangerous and unpredictable might also hold answers about our planet's hidden places. If you ever stand on the coast of Japan and look out over the Pacific, you might feel the old stories drifting on the wind. Picture ancient fishermen watching the horizon for signs of storms or calm, their small boats bobbing like leaves on a giant pond. Imagine the deep trenches far below, where volcanoes breathe heat and minerals into the ocean, shaping the currents that flow past. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, think of the Devil's Sea under a full moon, waves rolling gently or crashing wildly, secrets swirling in the darkness beneath. Let it remind you that our world is full of places where science and legend still meet, where the ocean keeps some of its riddles just out of reach, waiting for curious souls to keep asking questions. Hestalen Lights. Deep in a quiet valley in central Norway, far from the bright city lights and busy roads, lies a place where the sky sometimes puts on a show that no one can fully explain. This place is called Hestalen, a small peaceful valley lined with forests, rolling hills, and scattered farms. At first glance, it looks like any other remote village tucked away in the countryside. But when the night settles in and the air turns crisp and still, something unusual can appear in the sky, glowing orbs of light that drift, hover, or race silently across the dark. These glowing orbs are known as the Hestalen Lights. They have fascinated locals, puzzled scientists, and sparked the curiosity of skywatchers from around the world. To stand in the valley on a cold night, with your breath fogging the air and your eyes fixed on the horizon, is to feel that sense of wonder that comes when nature shows us something we cannot easily label or measure. The Hestalen Lights were first widely reported in the early 1980s, when locals began noticing strange lights moving through the valley at night. Sometimes they appeared as small, bright balls of white, yellow, or red. Other times they hovered low over the fields, so close that people claimed they could walk right up to them before the lights silently faded away. Some witnesses described the lights as flickering like candles. Others saw them moving so quickly they seemed to disappear in a blink. At the peak of the sightings, these lights were visible up to 20 times a week. Curious travelers, journalists, and researchers arrived with cameras and notebooks, hoping to catch a glimpse of the glowing visitors and to find a scientific answer for what was happening in this quiet valley. Over the decades, many ideas have been offered. Some scientists think the lights are caused by rare weather conditions in the valley, perhaps a special mix of temperature, humidity, and the minerals in the soil. The Hestalen Valley is rich in certain metals like copper and iron. Some researchers believe that when underground water flows over these minerals, it could create electrical charges that rise into the air, creating glowing plasma balls, something like natural neon signs drifting in the sky. Others suggest the lights could be caused by piezoelectricity, an effect that happens when certain rocks, like quartz, are put under pressure and generate an electric charge. In Hestalen, the valley floor is under constant pressure from shifting geological forces. Maybe, just maybe, the valley itself is like a giant battery, sending bursts of energy into the night. Some believe the lights might be reflections of distant car headlights or other human sources bouncing off layers of mist or unusual atmospheric conditions. But the shapes and movements of the Hestalen Lights do not always match up with that idea. They can stay completely still for minutes at a time, or split into two before merging again, moving in ways that no car light could explain. To get closer to the mystery, researchers built an observatory in the valley in the 1990s, a small sturdy station with cameras, sensors, and instruments that run night and day, watching the sky for any sign of the lights. Thanks to this work, the Hestalen Lights have been photographed, filmed, and measured. Scientists know how bright they can get and how they change color. They know that the lights can appear at any time of year, though they are seen most often in winter when the nights are long and dark. But for all the data gathered, no single theory has been proven beyond doubt. The lights remain one of nature's gentle riddles, a reminder that even in our modern world, with all our satellites and sensors, some things slip through our fingers like mist. For the people who live in Hestalin, the lights are part of life now. They are not feared. Instead, they are welcomed, a piece of local magic that connects the valley to the rest of the world. Tourists come with cameras and warm clothes, hoping to stand on the frozen ground and see a pale orb drift silently overhead. Children grow up with stories of the lights, learning to look up on clear nights and wonder what might be moving above the hills. If you visit Hestalin on a winter night, you might find yourself standing under a sky so clear you can count 1,000 stars. The forest around you is silent, except for the crunch of snow under your boots. Then, in the distance, you see it, a faint glowing ball rising from the valley floor. It drifts higher, flickering like a lantern carried by an invisible hand. You hold your breath, feeling your heart beat faster, and just as suddenly, the light fades into the dark, leaving you with the hush of the wind and the feeling that you have glimpsed something rare and ancient. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture the Hestalin Valley under its blanket of snow and starlight. Imagine the quiet hills, the warm glow of farmhouse windows, and somewhere out there, a gentle orb of light floating free above the frozen ground. Let it remind you that our world still keeps a few gentle secrets, small wonders that dance just beyond what we can prove, waiting for someone to look up and wonder. Hoia Baciu Forest. Tucked away just outside the old city of Cluj-Napoca in the heart of Transylvania, lies a forest that feels like something straight from the pages of a ghost story. It is called Hoia Baciu Forest, a small patch of ancient woodland so shrouded in local legends and eerie tales that some people call it the most haunted forest in the world. From a distance, it looks like any other peaceful European woodland, a quiet place where paths wind under canopies of leaves. Birds call from hidden branches, and sunlight filters through the trees. But step a little deeper, and you might start to notice something strange. The trees themselves twist and bend in unnatural shapes. Their trunks curve and loop as if frozen mid-dance, some growing in tight spirals, others arching sideways before straightening again. And it is not just the strange trees that make Hoia Baciu Forest famous. Many visitors claim that as soon as they enter, they feel an odd sensation, a prickling on the skin, a sudden rush of cold, or a heavy feeling that makes their chest tighten. Some say their cameras malfunction, or their phones lose battery for no reason at all. Compasses spin wildly, refusing to settle on true north. It is easy to see why stories cling to this place. Hoia Baciu Forest gets its name from a shepherd who, according to local legend, vanished here more than a century ago, along with his flock of 200 sheep. They simply disappeared into the trees one afternoon and were never seen again. Since then, stories of vanishings, ghostly figures, and flickering lights have added layer after layer to the forest's reputation. People have reported seeing strange orbs floating through the trees at night, pale blue or white spheres that drift through the mist, only to vanish if you get too close. Others claim to have heard voices whispering from the shadows when no one else is there. Some visitors have taken photographs only to find shapes or faces hidden in the images when they get home, things they swear they never saw with their own eyes. One of the most curious spots in Hoia Baciu Forest is a place known simply as the Clearing. This is a nearly perfect circle in the middle of the woods where nothing grows. No trees, no large bushes, just grass and patches of bare earth. Even though the rest of the forest is thick with vegetation, this circle remains stubbornly empty. Soil tests have not revealed anything strange enough to explain why trees refuse to grow there. It is just one more puzzle among many. So what could cause these oddities? Is there a logical explanation behind Hoia-Baciu's twisted trees, spinning compasses, and electronic glitches? Some scientists think there might be natural reasons that, when put together, make the forest feel so unusual. The strange tree shapes, for example, could come from environmental stress, strong winds, soil shifts, or damage when the trees were young, causing them to grow in loops and curves instead of straight up. The stories about electronic devices and compasses might have something to do with magnetic anomalies in the area. Certain minerals underground can create small distortions in Earth's magnetic field. If a patch of rock contains high levels of iron or other magnetic materials, it could cause a compass to spin or make delicate electronics glitch. Still, these explanations do not cover everything, especially the feelings that so many people describe when they step into the forest. Psychologists say that sometimes, when people hear enough ghost stories about a place, they become more sensitive to every creak of a branch or flicker of light. The mind plays tricks, filling the shadows with things that may or may not be there. It does not mean people are imagining it all, but rather that the human brain is wired to look for patterns, even in the dark. Yet, for the people who live near Hoia-Baciu Forest, the stories are more than just legends. Some villagers avoid the woods altogether after dark. Others leave small offerings or whisper prayers when they pass by. Ghost hunters, paranormal researchers, and curious tourists keep coming back, drawn by the chance to catch a glimpse of the unexplained. If you visit Hoia-Baciu on a misty evening, you might find yourself standing in the clearing, listening to the soft rustle of the wind in the grass. You might glance at your compass and see the needle swing in lazy circles. You might feel the strange hush that settles over the forest as dusk falls, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath, waiting to see what you will do next. And when you walk back down the winding paths, the crooked trees watching you with their bent, twisted shapes, you might wonder whether the forest's mysteries are really all that different from the ones we hold inside our own minds, questions we may never answer but cannot stop asking. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture Hoia-Baciu Forest under the silver glow of the moon. Imagine the shadows of the gnarled trees stretching across the forest floor. Listen for the whispers you are not quite sure you heard. Let it remind you that even in our modern world, there are still pockets of wildness where our ancient fears and deep curiosity meet, places that invite us to step inside, look closer, and remember that not every mystery wants to be solved. Fly Geyser. And in the vast open desert of northern Nevada, where the land stretches for miles under an endless blue sky, there sits something so bright and unexpected that it almost feels like a dream. Rising from the dusty earth like a colorful sculpture from another world is Fly Geyser, a living fountain of boiling water and minerals that never stop spouting, painting the desert with streaks of green, red, yellow, and orange. Fly Geyser is not an ancient natural wonder like the steaming geysers of Yellowstone. It is actually a happy accident, a strange blend of human hands and the Earth's restless energy. But sometimes accidents make the most surprising beauty. It all began in 1916, when ranchers digging a well on the remote Fly Ranch hoped to find water for their crops and cattle. Instead, they hit a pocket of geothermal water deep underground, water heated by the Earth's inner heat. The hot water burst through the well but cooled quickly in the dry desert air. The well was capped, the ranchers moved on, and for decades the land stayed quiet. Then, in the 1960s, another team drilled a new geothermal well nearby, looking for hot water that could be used for energy. This time, they tapped into a deeper source. and when they realized the water was too hot for practical use, they left the well uncapped. The earth took over from there. Hot water, rich with dissolved minerals, began seeping through cracks in the well casing, bubbling up to the surface year after year. As the water reached the open air, it cooled and released the minerals it carried, mostly calcium carbonate. These minerals began to build up around the opening, forming cones and terraces, layer by layer, like tiny mountains growing under the desert sun. Today, Fly Geyser is about 12 feet tall and still growing. Its spouts of steaming water shoot up into the air, spraying tiny rainbows into the sky when the light hits them just right. But it is the colors of the geyser itself that make it so breathtaking. Brilliant greens, reds, and yellows coat the terraces like paint. These colors come from thermophilic algae, tiny organisms that thrive in the scalding mineral-rich water. The algae form mats on the wet surfaces, their colors changing with temperature and mineral content, turning the geyser into a living, shifting canvas. If you stand near Fly Geyser, which sits on private land but can now be visited on guided tours, you can hear the water hiss and bubble as it escapes the earth. Warm steam drifts across your skin, and the smell of minerals floats on the desert breeze. Around the geyser, small pools collect the runoff, creating shallow ponds that reflect the colors of the sky and the rainbow towers above. What makes Fly Geyser even more magical is the world around it. It rises unexpectedly in the middle of the Black Rock Desert, a place known for its vast flat playa, where the famous Burning Man festival is held each year. The contrast between the dry, cracked earth of the desert and the wet, living colors of the geyser is so striking that it almost does not seem real. Scientists say Fly Geyser will keep growing as long as the hot water flows. Its mineral cones will slowly change shape, the colors will shift, and the ponds will move and expand. It is a reminder that the earth is always alive, always building and changing, even in the most unlikely places. Fly Ranch, the land where the geyser sits, is now owned by the Burning Man Project, a nonprofit that protects the area and offers visitors a chance to see this hidden wonder in person. Small groups can walk the quiet trails that lead to the geyser, watching birds and insects that have made homes in the warm ponds. It is a fragile ecosystem, part wild, part human-made, and part Earth's own doing. If you visit Fly Geyser at sunrise, you might see the first light of day striking the mineral towers, making the colors glow even brighter. Steam drifts into the crisp desert air, catching the early rays and wrapping the geyser in a soft halo. It feels almost like standing in front of a living sculpture, a work of art that no human could have planned so perfectly. There are no fences around the geyser, just the open desert and the wide sky above. It feels peaceful, like a secret hidden in plain sight. People stand quietly when they see it up close, listening to the hiss of boiling water, the gentle splash as it falls into the rainbow-colored pools. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture Fly Geyser steaming under a sky full of stars. Imagine the warm water bubbling up from deep within the earth, feeding the algae that paint its cones in brilliant colors. Let it remind you that sometimes the world's strangest beauty happens by accident, when nature and people collide in unexpected ways, and the land itself decides what to make of it. And as you dream, remember that even in a desert, life finds a way to bloom, not with flowers, but with towers of color and steam rising steadily toward the sky. Nazca lines in the dry, windswept plains of southern Peru lies one of the world's greatest and most puzzling ancient mysteries, the Nazca Lines. Stretching across a vast flat desert called the Pampa Colorada, these enormous geoglyphs Shapes and lines carved into the desert floor have been waiting quietly for centuries, so massive that you cannot see their true beauty from the ground. They reveal themselves only from high above, like giant drawings waiting for someone to look down from the sky. The Nazca lines were made by the Nazca people, a civilization that thrived in this harsh, arid land from around 200 BC to 600 AD. To this day, no one knows exactly why they created these giant figures and lines, but when you stand on the dusty plains and imagine what it took to carve these shapes with no machines, no airplanes, and no way to truly see what they were making, it fills you with a quiet sense of wonder at what human hands and minds can do. The Nazca lines cover nearly 200 square miles of desert. They include hundreds of straight lines that run for miles, zigzagging across the plain like ancient runways. Some lines form simple geometric shapes, triangles, trapezoids, spirals. Others come together in figures of living things, a hummingbird stretching almost as long as a football field, a monkey with a coiled tail, a giant spider, a condor with outstretched wings, a whale, and even a figure that some call the astronaut, a strange, human-like shape waving hello from the side of a hill. When you look at the Nazca lines from above, from a small plane or drone, they feel almost too precise to be so old. The lines were made by removing the top layer of dark, sun-baked stones to reveal the lighter, dusty soil beneath. This simple but clever technique has kept them visible for centuries because the dry desert climate protects them from wind and rain. Even after more than 1,000 years, the shapes remain clear, thin paths of light earth against the darker ground. How did the Nazca people make them? Archaeologists believe they used simple tools and careful planning. They probably marked out the designs on the ground with stakes and ropes, much like how you might draw a large pattern on sand at the beach. But the real puzzle is how they could create shapes so big and so perfectly proportioned without ever seeing them from above. Some researchers think they built small hills or platforms to check their work. Others believe they may have used basic math and surveying skills to scale up smaller drawings. The bigger question is why they made them at all. Some think the lines and shapes were made to honor their gods, especially gods related to water. In a place as dry as the Nazca Desert, water meant life. The shapes might have been giant offerings, prayers drawn on the earth to ask the sky for rain. Others suggest the lines could have been part of sacred pathways used during rituals and ceremonies, routes that guided people from one holy place to another. A few researchers believe the lines might be linked to astronomy, mapping out the movements of the sun, moon, or stars. Some lines point directly to where the sun rises or sets during the solstices, but not every line fits neatly into this idea. Like many ancient puzzles, the truth might be a mix of all these theories or something else entirely. Adding to the mystery is the question of how these massive geoglyphs stayed hidden from the wider world for so long. Local people always knew they were there, but it wasn't until the 1920s and 1930s, when pilots flew over the desert on early air mail routes, that the world saw the full scope of what the Nazca had created. From the sky, the desert seemed alive with ancient drawings etched across its surface. Today, people from all over the world travel to the Nazca Desert to glimpse these ancient lines from the air. Small planes take off every day, circling above the plains so passengers can peer out their windows and see the hummingbird, the monkey, the spider, all waiting silently in the dust below. Visitors stand on metal observation towers along the highway, hoping to catch even a piece of a figure in their camera lens. Yet even now, the Nazca lines remain fragile. Modern threats like illegal driving across the desert, Mining and climate changes can damage these delicate designs. Peru's government and UNESCO have worked to protect the lines and the wider desert so they can survive for centuries to come. Archaeologists continue to discover new shapes each year, hidden under layers of sand and rock, waiting to tell their stories. If you ever stand on the desert plain, feel the hot wind on your face, and look out across the endless flat earth, you might picture the Nazca people walking the same paths long ago. Imagine them pulling stones aside, tracing lines that stretch to the horizon, believing that the earth and sky were connected through these careful marks. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture yourself flying high above the Pampa Colorada under a clear blue sky. Look down at the ancient hummingbird spread out beneath you, its wings wide in the desert sun. Let the Nazca lines remind you that our ancestors found ways to send messages to the sky, messages we are still trying to understand, and that sometimes the greatest mysteries are written right beneath our feet, waiting patiently for curious eyes to look down and wonder why. After drifting through so many of Earth's strangest corners, from hills where cars roll uphill by themselves, to forests that twist your sense of direction, to deserts where giant drawings speak to the sky, you might find yourself asking a simple question. Why do these places pull at our curiosity so deeply? Why do we return to stories about gravity hills, magnetic mysteries, and glowing orbs, even when science tries to explain them? Part of the answer lies in how our minds work. We humans are storytellers at heart. From the first flickering fires in ancient caves, we have loved sharing tales about things we do not fully understand. When we come across something that bends the rules of what we think we know, a stone that balances impossibly on a hill, a lake that petrifies animals, or lights that drift silently across a dark sky, it sparks that same old wonder inside us. It feels like a tiny reminder that the world is more than just what we can measure or prove. These places do not just bend physics, they bend the space between our senses and our expectations. A gravity hill fools our eyes and inner ear into thinking the road slopes one way when it actually tilts the other. A crooked forest feels unsettling, not because of ghosts, but because our brains crave straight lines and trees. A magnetic anomaly turns a compass into a spinning dancer, reminding us that even our most trusted tools can be tricked by nature's hidden forces. Yet, when we stand in these places, when we feel the pull of the illusion or sense that electric buzz in the air, the science behind it does not ruin the wonder. Instead, it deepens it. Knowing that a strange hill is an optical illusion does not make watching a car roll uphill any less delightful. Realizing that an underwater volcano might swallow ships does not make the legend of the Devil's Sea any less haunting. When we learn that the colors of a geyser come from algae that love extreme heat, we marvel even more at life's ability to thrive in the harshest conditions. In these places, geology, physics, and the human mind dance together. The Earth's ancient movements shape landscapes that make us pause and tilt our heads. Our eyes turn patterns into meaning, our ears catch whispers in the wind, and our hearts want to believe in the impossible. It is a reminder that science and mystery are not opposites, they live side by side. Each strange place is like a gentle tug on the curtain that separates what we know from what we still dream about. Sometimes the fascination is also about scale. Many of these places are huge, massive stone heads on Easter Island, ancient lines in the Nazca Desert that stretch for miles, a crater burning for decades in the middle of a lonely plain. Standing before something so big and so old makes us feel small in the best possible way. We remember that our lives are tiny sparks compared to the Earth's endless story, but we are sparks that wonder, question, and explore. Other times, it is about hidden forces. A compass spinning wildly in the middle of nowhere feels like a secret code we cannot read. A forest that drains your camera battery or twists your sense of direction makes you wonder if the earth is whispering something we have not learned to hear yet. These moments make us step outside our everyday logic, if only for a heartbeat. They make the world feel enchanted again, even if the magic is just our mind trying to solve a puzzle. There is also a beautiful sense of connection. Strange places remind us that we are not the first to stand there, scratching our heads or gasping in awe. Long before modern science, local people saw the same things and told their own stories. They spoke of dragons in the sea, spirits in the forest, or gods who carved lines in the desert. Their myths are not so different from ours today. They are just another way of saying, "Look at this, isn't it amazing?" And maybe that is the real reason these places matter so much to us. They show us that there are still corners of our world that defy easy answers. In a time when so much can be Googled and mapped, when satellites see every rooftop and deep-sea robots search the ocean floor, it is comforting to know that Earth still holds places that make us say, "I do not know." Those words, simple and humble, are the seed of every discovery that has ever changed us. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, hold on to that wonder. Imagine the strange hills, the fiery craters, the forests that bend, and the lights that dance across dark valleys. Picture all the curious souls who stood in those same places long before you, staring, smiling, shivering a little, then telling stories by firelight or under the stars. They, like you, felt that electric joy of being reminded that the world is big, that we do not know it all, and that sometimes the earth herself loves to play with our sense of what is real. Tomorrow, we may explain a few more secrets, but tonight, it is enough to remember that our world still knows how to surprise us, and that our mind and physics will always dance together, under every strange moon and whispering hill. So here we are, dear dreamer, at the end of our journey through some of the strangest, most mind-bending corners of this beautiful world. We have drifted together past hills that trick our eyes, forests that twist our sense of direction, lights that float silently through cold valleys, and ancient shapes carved into the earth so large they can only be fully seen from the sky. And what if these wonders whispered to us? They remind us that our world still holds tiny riddles, waiting quietly beneath our feet or drifting above our heads. Riddles that bend what we think we know about gravity, time, and even the steady pull of a simple compass needle. Isn't that comforting in its own curious way? We spend so much of our waking life trying to hold tight to certainty. We read books, measure facts, and trust our senses to tell us what is real. But sometimes, the earth itself nudges us gently and says, "Look closer. Maybe you don't have all the answers just yet." And maybe that is a good thing. Maybe that is the magic. As you lie back tonight, safe and warm under your blanket, think of Spook Hill in Florida, where cars roll uphill, fooling our eyes. Think of the forests in Romania, where trees bend in strange shapes and cameras sometimes flicker out as if the woods themselves are playing tricks. Think of the salt flats in Bolivia, where the sky and earth become one endless mirror. Or the geysers that grow into rainbow towers, bubbling up secrets from the hot heart of the world. Each of these places holds a simple truth. There is still wonder left for us to find. And isn't that what we really crave? It is easy to think that we have mapped everything, photographed every corner, measured every star. Yet these places, these gravity hills, magnetic mysteries, Lights that float without a sound show us that the earth keeps a few gentle secrets tucked away, not because they are too big to find, but because sometimes you have to stand still, feel the air on your skin, and see the world with the soft eyes of a child. You have to let your mind dance with what you feel, what you see, and what you know might never be fully explained. Maybe that is why you're here tonight, wandering these strange spots in your imagination, because somewhere deep inside, you carry that quiet love for things that do not fit neatly in a textbook. You love the places that make you tilt your head and ask, how is this possible? And those sweet joie repetives, and in that question lives a spark, the same spark that long ago made people gather around fires to share stories about dragons sleeping beneath the waves, or spirits that live in forests, or hidden cities lost under the sea. So tonight, take that spark with you as you drift into sleep. Let it glow gently in your dreams. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a glowing crater in Turkmenistan, warm air brushing your face as flames flicker under the starlit sky, or floating in the calm air above the Nazca lines, the hummingbird etched into the desert below you like a giant whisper meant for the heavens, or walking down a winding road where your compass needle spins and your footsteps feel lighter than they should. Remember, you do not need to solve every riddle to feel the joy of it. Some puzzles are not here to be cracked open, but to remind us that we are small and that our smallness is a gift. For what is more wonderful than being part of something so vast, so old, and so full of hidden corners that even after centuries, we still get to say, look, there is something I have never seen before. If these gentle rambles help you rest tonight, if they spark a dream, a soft smile, or a question that stays with you tomorrow, then this little snoozy corner of the world has done its job well. Thank you for wandering with me, for letting your mind drift far from your daily thoughts, and for remembering that sometimes the best journeys happen while you are curled up in bed, drifting through stories and mysteries that the earth kindly shares. So tonight, drift off knowing our world still hides tiny riddles that bend our sense of reality. The next time you see a crooked tree, a hill that looks a bit too steep for what your eyes say, or a strange light dancing in the sky, pause for a moment. Feel the pull of that old sweet wonder. Maybe you'll smile and whisper, this is one of those places. This is where my mind and the world get to dance together. If you enjoyed wandering with me tonight, please tap like, leave a comment with your favorite strange place, and subscribe so we can drift again together next time. Until then, rest easy, fellow explorer. May your dreams be filled with glowing lights, gentle mysteries, and the comforting thought that our world will always have secrets waiting just for you. Sweet dreams.